Good evening, everyone. Just getting everything ironed out, and then we will get going. There we go. There we go. Oh, geez, that is not going to work. Welcome, everybody. Hopefully everybody had a good weekend. For me, I'm just tired. The majority of the week was pretty busy this week. So, yeah, that's definitely something that happened. Here we go. There we are. We got all the details ironed out, at least for the moment. And here we go. I actually forgot this one too. Funny how you forget every single thing. So we are going to do a little bit of a pre-show tonight. There's not a whole lot to talk about, but we're going to take care of some of the stories that didn't necessarily make the cut. And as soon as we get Alex here, we will go ahead and get that started. But we do have an interesting evening tonight. We're going to be talking about EA and BioWare. A lot of EA. Not necessarily just trashing them or anything like that. There's just been a lot of stories based around them. We're going to be talking Bethesda. A number of you guys have sent me the story, and we're finally going to talk about it. We're also going to be talking Star Wars, and we're going to be talking the Academy Awards, or at least the Academy. And also an interesting casting that a lot of people have kind of misinterpreted. So you guys can look forward to that very soon. Here we go. And we're just waiting for people to get here. In the meantime, feel free to join in on the conversation either on YouTube chat or on our Discord server. And if you have any questions, I can go ahead and answer them as best I can right now. While we wait, because that's what I do at the beginning of a show. But yeah, tonight's going to be kind of an uneventful night because we're basically catching up on news. I don't necessarily have anything else lined up for right now, but you guys can look forward to more stuff in the coming months as I kind of get things going for, because I need to warn you guys in advance, in about a month, I'm actually going to be taking a little bit of a break from the podcast, and it's just because I've got baby coming, and so I've got other priorities that need to be taken care of. Speaking of babies, Alex! No, I'm kidding.
You're calling me a baby?
No, but I'm calling you baby's uncle, so...
Yeah.
He'll probably be here, guys, but, you know, baby's daddy probably has a little bit more priorities than baby's uncle. So...
That's true.
This is definitely true. And with Alex here, we can go ahead and start up the pre-show. And we have a last-minute addition to the pre-show because we weren't able to put it into the podcast itself. But I feel it needs to be talked about as Alex found the story. We have gotten new news from the Sonic the Hedgehog film as Jim Carrey has been cast as Dr. Robotnik.
Okay, that's all I can say. It's just like, okay. I don't know. I thought they were going to go with, I figured they were going to stick with the cast.
Alex, I'm going to cut you off right here now because I think the answer you're looking for is this. What?
What? Yeah, what?
Yeah, that's the response that like I had, and we reacted to this. I love the GIF that Romney put up in our Facebook thread, which is "This concerns me enormously," and I just found like I just did a search for like not sure, and the first thing that came up was Philip J. Fry from Futurama. So I'm just like, you know what, using it. So yeah,
let me see that.
Jim Carrey is going to be joining the Sonic the Hedgehog film as Dr. Robotnik.
This is going to be interesting. Oh, my.
Is it official? Can we officially say that this is going to be based off of the off of the weekday cartoon of Sonic, not Sat AM?
Maybe not. All we know all we really know about the movie.
One thing, it's comical Robotnik.
He's had his serious roles, but anyway, all we really know about the movie so far is Sonic. It's going to be kind of a buddy cop movie, and this is obviously pending any last minute rewrites or whatever. But it's supposedly going to be a buddy cop movie, and Sonic is going to be kind of the juvenile delinquent. He's going to be the rebel without a cause hedgehog.
Yes, confirmed. We know that this hedgehog will indeed have attitude on the screen.
Yes.
Yeah. We don't know necessarily the type of Robotnik he'll be playing, if he'll be playing serious or if he'll be playing hokey. We don't really know, because until we see trailers, we're not going to see, like, because the other question that I have is, okay, I'm not saying you couldn't do a live action Robotnik, but given the designs that we've gotten for Robotnik over the years, it is likely we would get a CG Robotnik. Okay. At least at some point in the film, right?
Possibly
to have the big bulbous gut.
It depends on what kind of plot they're gonna go with. You know how how serious of a villain they're gonna make him. If they're gonna make him more comical, more say in line with Dr. Robotnik / Eggman these days versus him back at the 90s or the early parts of the 2000s. It is a weird choice.
It is really, really weird.
He can either ham it up or really do good. I mean,
and the problem also is that Jim Carrey's kind of hard to read these days, because, like, I'm trying to think, what was the last movie he did? Because he had that whole stint of serious movies. Then he did the CG Christmas Carol, but then he did a whole other slew of serious movies after that. I don't really think he's even done comedy anymore, has he?
I'm sure he hasn't been in a movie since 2016 with Dark Crimes, and I'm going to assume that's a drama.
Yeah, so probably
crime drama thriller.
It's probably going to be like a darker Robotnik then, because I'm sure he could still pull out the comedy, but he's intentionally avoided it for so many years. I'm wondering if, like, he doesn't even want to do that. So yeah. I wish I had positive things to say about this casting. I really did, but I don't know where they're going with it, and therefore I don't know if this is a good casting or not. I mean, we just barely found out a couple of weeks ago that James Marsden was being brought in. We don't even know what he's doing in the film. So at that point, I find it interesting. We don't know Marsden's role, but we know who Jim Carrey's playing.
It's still my guess that Marsden will be playing, like, the cop character. That's still my guess. I mean, they could very well just put him as Sonic the Hedgehog. I still think they're going to go with Roger Craig Smith as the voice of Sonic, because I can't see why not, really. They've already got some star power attached, so it's not like they can't sacrifice.
You say that, and then all of a sudden we're going to get a swerve announcement. Jaleel White's coming back to play Sonic.
I know that's
going to happen. Like, swerves like that happen. That's the thing. This is so unpredictable.
I guess so, but I don't see White coming back to the role. I'm sure he's moved on since then. I can wonder if he could even do the voice even remotely half of what he was able to do. Because he was still fairly young in the 90s, and
I don't know. So I had that question when he was cast on to the Eddie LeBron film, because he hadn't done it in so many years. So I don't know, but I'm technically in the same camp as you. I think Roger Craig Smith, let's just say for the sake of argument, if James Marsden is cast as Sonic, then he's cast as Sonic. But more than likely, they're going to dip into the well of familiarity, and they'll cast Roger Craig Smith to play Sonic, because that's the voice that people know. And then, more than likely, I kind of agree with your theory, Alex. The James Marsden will be like the cop character, or, I don't know, something in between. It'd actually be funny if he was cast as, like, the city's mayor.
Yeah.
So yeah, moving on into the, well, actually, let's just go ahead and get Romney's opinion on this. Jim Carrey is Robotnik. Oh, can't hear you.
I was like, he's speechless, everybody.
He has gone so speechless that he literally can't talk. But
right.
Points for your dedication.
There we go.
All right. To answer the question, I have concerns. On the one hand, it may work. Like I keep mentioning, if they don't take it seriously, it could work, or we could basically have Count Olaf 2.0. Or
yes,
I guess this would technically be Count Olaf 1.5.
Yeah. So moving on into the next story that didn't make the cut. That is going to be that, unfortunately, I didn't want to put this in just because it felt weird in the agenda, but science fiction writer Harlan Ellison has died at the age of 84. Now, a lot of his works, I'm not sure if people would know, but I do know that he did a lot of writing for Star Trek, and he has his own novels. Geez, where are they in the article? Yeah, he wrote novels. He wrote novels, comic books, television scripts, and short stories. The most popular thing that he actually did was a Star Trek, or one of the most popular things he did was a Star Trek episode, The City on the Edge of Forever.
Yeah, the main story I know Harlan Ellison for, although I haven't read it, I've heard discussions of it, and that is the story I Have No Mouth, But I Must Scream.
Yeah.
Now, most people probably have heard of it because of the video game based on it, but the story itself, it's, well, pretty disturbing, but then again, that's kind of the point when it's a story about a super intelligent AI that learned to hate humanity, triggered the apocalypse, and is literally keeping 5 humans alive just to watch them suffer.
Yeah. Unfortunately,
he also wrote an early treatment for iRobot, not the one that became the Will Smith movie, but a much earlier treatment.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's some controversy.
Interview with him, and he wanted to work on an Asimov film. So
yeah, I know there's like some controversy that that James Cameron kind of stole one of his ideas for what became Terminator, and I think he sued over it and won. It was either Terminator or Dark Angel, or
involving being fired by Walt Disney Studios after overhearing him making a joke about making a pornographic film starring Disney characters.
Yeah, and to kind of clarification, with the James Cameron, it wouldn't be Dark Angel because that was by 2 people from Argentina who created Cyber 6, so it's probably Terminator.
Probably Terminator.
Oh yeah, well, let's see. Ellison, here it is. Ellison alleged James Cameron's film, The Terminator, drew from material from an episode, Original Outer Limits, which Ellison scripted. The episode was Soldier. Let's see. And yeah, they settled out of court for undisclosed sum.
Yep. And the let's see. So, I mean, final thoughts on this one. I'm sad to see him go because I have seen the Star Trek episode. In fact, I believe, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think that was one of my dad's favorite ones. I know that my dad did like Harlan Ellison when he did see him doing work. So I'm a little sad about that, but considering that he died of natural causes at the age of 84, I mean, you can't do anything but wish the best for the family at this point. At least he didn't die to cancer or something like that. It sounds to me like he died of natural causes. So,
and at the very least, he's lived at least he's also left his mark in the world of science fiction and entertainment. It's very much a case that, yeah, the man himself may be gone, but we're probably still going to be reading his stories in a good 20, 30 years or so.
Yep. So there you go. The final story that we have for the pre-show is just a quick heads up for people if you didn't already know about this, but if you have a copy of Metal Gear Rising on Mac, you can't play it anymore. And it's because of our wonderful term that we always like bringing out every now and then, DRM, Digital Rights Management. So let's see here. Yeah, according to a recent Reddit post, the PC port opted to include a constant online connection for the game. It has since shut down, leaving Metal Gear Rising's DRM without a server to contact, rendering it literally unplayable. And then we do actually have a quote in the story. There is no reason why this game can't run in its current format for the people who bought it. There's also no one to make a patch, and users who bought this game legally are stuck having to resort to pirating a copy if they want to play it. So, yeah, that sucks. That sucks really bad. Yeah. Especially considering that I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't played Metal Gear Rising. Do the console versions require an online connection?
No.
Yeah, so why on earth is it required for PC, I wonder?
Well, with PC, the reason DRM is even a thing on PC is because of the ease of piracy, of how easy it is to get into the source code of a game.
Okay, yeah.
And so that's more why DRM tends to be something mainly on PC as opposed to consoles, because consoles already have measures in place to lock out pirated games. They all kind of learned their lesson from the Dreamcast. And so if you put an unofficial PlayStation 3 game into a PlayStation 3, for example, it'll just say disk read error. It won't load it whatsoever because there's no way to trick the BIOS anymore. So that's why DRM is mainly a console thing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, PC, mainly a PC thing.
That's still a little frustrating. Like, if the game does not require it, then I don't see the problem here. But I mean, I get what Romney is saying, but it's just like, that's really dumb. And I feel bad for those who like legitimately bought it and now can't play it.
Yeah, and knowing Konami, they're not going to do anything about it.
No, they really are not. Like, Konami just doesn't care. They've done very little to support the games that they have already out there. So I wouldn't expect anything anytime soon, people. Yeah, that's pretty much our pre-show, but we thought we'd at least let you guys know. If you have a copy of Metal Gear Rising for PC, you might want to see if you could track down a console version for cheap, because it doesn't sound to me like it's going to be working anytime soon.
I think I got my copy on a Humble Bundle once.
Yeah, it's just so stupid. It honestly is. Oh, and I actually, we could probably get into this one because I had to kick the story due to the fact that listeners kind of demanded us to go into a different direction. But Alex did find the story, and it originally did make the agenda tonight. So YouTube has landed an interesting new series, a dark comedy that's going to be from Kirsten Dunst and from George Clooney's studio, Smokehouse Productions. I always forget the studio names for a lot of these actors. But yeah, Smokehouse Productions is going to be producing a series called, where is it in the article? Jiminy Christmas. Oh, yes. It's a dark comedy for YouTube called On Becoming a God in Central Florida. The series, which is being written by co-creators Robert Funk and Matt Lutsky, will be premiering in 2019. And originally, this thing was conceived for AMC, but has since been bought by YouTube. So it will be a YouTube Red or YouTube Premium series that you guys can watch, very similar to Cobra Kai. Now, Dunst is going to also be executive producing it along with Clooney, and they already have the cast kind of set up, and I think they even have a couple of, from when I last checked, they had a couple of episodes already in the can, so they're well on their way to being able to get this series out in 2019. Now, I found this interesting because mainly the popularity of Cobra Kai. A lot of people did not expect Cobra Kai to do as well as it did. It was kind of a shock wonder that it upped sales for YouTube Red and YouTube. I'm not even sure what they call it anymore. Is it Red or Premium now?
Premium.
Yeah, it's Premium now. So yeah, it actually did spike the sales of YouTube Premium for a little while people were watching Cobra Kai. I have since heard that the numbers have kind of gone down for people who have already watched it and they didn't want to keep the subscription, or because I believe there was a free offer that went out for a little while, for at least 30 days, and people just binge watched Cobra Kai and then they never renewed.
Yeah, that sounds about right, because
kind of like CBS All Access and Star Trek Discovery.
Or really any streaming service that you're not really sure about. I mean, I know I abused the crap out of the free trials of Crunchyroll before I finally did subscribe to it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, honestly, given how successful Cobra Kai was, the fact that they're greenlighting another show with recognizable talent, it shows, hey, Cobra Kai was well enough to turn over some sort of a profit, so it just kind of shows, hey, maybe instead of throwing that money at YouTubers who aren't actually that funny or really that good on camera with high budgets and expensive sets, maybe it's like, yeah, let's maybe give the money to the people who actually have filmmaking experience and let's actually get some quality content. How about that?
How about that? I don't know about you guys. Like, did either of you guys go and get Premium to watch Cobra Kai or anything like that? I think Aldo was a YouTube Red subscriber at one point, but I'm not sure about either of you.
I have not. I'm still, it's very much, as interested as I am in Cobra Kai, it's kind of a case I'm still not really sold on YouTube whatever the hell they want to call it this week, YouTube Gordita Supreme.
Well, and especially considering all of the circumstances around YouTube this year, I really don't feel like supporting them. I'd much rather, and I think I've even read a story saying that it is going to get some kind of release outside of YouTube. So like either that's going to be a physical release or some kind of like Prime Video release or something like that, that people can go watch instead.
Likely a DVD, because that's kind of, I'm pretty much going to do this the same way I do it with Into the Badlands. I just wait for the season to come out on DVD and then just buy the DVD and watch it. That way I don't have to wait for things to buffer or load or any of that. Granted, I wish cable shows didn't make their episodes almost an hour long, because sheesh.
Jiminy Christmas. Yeah. So what about you, Alex? Did you get premium at all? I'm not necessarily saying for Cobra Kai or for anything.
Nah, never had any interest in premium.
I remember experimenting with the early concept of when they were actually trying to get things like anime and series up on YouTube, under the premise of like they were experimenting about going up against Hulu, but it was such a weird and wonky system that I don't remember even using it all that much. I think the only reason I watched it once was it was one of the few places where you could get Roughnecks, the Starship Trooper Chronicles, a CG series that me and my dad used to love watching together.
I remember that show.
And even though Crackle has a streaming service, you can access that series on there, and I don't understand why, because it's owned by them.
Well, sort of. The rights to Starship Troopers are kind of in a bit of a weird limbo, particularly with Roughnecks, because of mainly because the company that produced the series no longer exists. Because I remember looking into it and actually trying to find DVDs of it to revisit it myself. And that's the main issue, is that the rights for Roughnecks specifically are kind of in legal limbo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those bugs gave me nightmares.
Those bugs? Or the bugs?
Yes, the bugs. The bugs gave me nightmares.
I was actually going to say, like, I've since read a little bit of the actual books that it's based off of. Those bugs actually sound to me a lot more scary, strangely enough. I'm not even sure why that is, but maybe it's just my imagination ran wild with it.
Well, the imagination is a very powerful thing.
Yeah, yeah. So that's going to go ahead and wrap up the pre-show. Let's go ahead and get things started for the podcast. So let's go ahead and get things up and going.
Sound speed.
Rolling.
All right. 3, 2, 1. And let me get all the necessary stuff up and running. Those who are brand spanking new to the stream, this is actually exclusive. We give you guys the pre-show, and then we record the podcast live, so you guys can see the episode in case you haven't subscribed to our RSS feed. But man, you should. If you aren't already, you should be. Jiminy Christmas. What the heck is wrong with you? All right. Greetings once again, my friends, and welcome back to Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions, the podcast where we talk the week's events in Geek for Friday night, June 29th, 2018. We're almost we're officially halfway through the year, so you guys can look forward to that. I am your host, Adam Mickelson, a.k.a. Drac. I hope everybody's had an awesome week since we've been able to talk to you guys and talk the week's events in Geek, but we're here again. We've got some events to talk about, and of course, I'm being joined by my fellow panel of fellow geeks, fellow YouTubers, fellow content creators, fellow awesome guys in general. If you guys aren't following them on YouTube or in all of their other endeavors, what the heck is wrong with you? And we're going to start things off with Stephen Romney of Studio Ghost Utah, of From the Shelf, of Rhapsody in Cinema, Martial March, Monster Clash, and anything else that he decides to make that is just movie magic. Stephen Romney, how you doing?
Oh, doing pretty good. I mean, today was kind of a weird day. I can't go into too much detail, but it's kind of one of those things that it made me really thankful that my bosses are actually really cool people because, well, I guess I will say this. Word to the wise, if you're going to confront someone and accuse them of something, make sure you're actually accusing the right person.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it was weird. Like,
we're not going to get into the details, but you were the target, I'm guessing?
Yeah, it was weird. I got like these cryptic messages and then started getting yelled at over some weird text thing. And as soon as I let my bosses know, they jumped right on it and resolved it. But it was kind of a case of, my bosses are cool, but it was quite trying to say the least.
Yeah, but I hate when weird stuff like that happens in the workplace. And then we are also being joined by the Shadow Blazer himself, Alex Short, who has decided to join us out of the loving embrace of his anime season that he's trying to wrap up so he can get you guys those reviews that you demand so much from him. Alex, how are you?
Well, shame on me. I haven't been working as much as I should.
What the heck is wrong with you? Now I'm going to go ahead and send all my hate mail to the host of the podcast that I work for.
Anyway, yeah, send it to Drac so I don't have to read it. He'll read it for me.
What happens? I don't know what I did.
But in all seriousness, I finally picked up Hyperdimensia Neptunia, which was gifted to me quite a few years ago on Steam by our own Aldo Gomez.
Right.
So thank you for that, Aldo. And it's like, it just took me forever to get to it. One, on my older PC, I couldn't play it because it was not powerful enough to run the game. And ever since I got my new PC, it's like I've been meaning to get to it. I kept playing other stuff or going back to older stuff. And finally decided this week I gotta start playing it, gotta pick it up. And I've been enjoying it. It's a fun little RPG. Full of fan service, for sure, but a lot of little tongue-in-cheek, really cheesy humor, which I like.
And I should just probably clarify this. I don't normally get like hate mail for Alex because of his work, but this week I did. And I forgot to tell you the story when we were together last, but apparently I was told to halt the production of Draken's Shadow videos until you put out a review, because apparently I'm taking too much of your schedule.
Well, it's not just you. It is my actual 9-to-5 job that I got to do.
No, right? It's almost like life is a thing.
Yeah, but I mean, I got something in the pipeline. I started shoot. Fun fact: I was actually kind of getting the footage, starting to shoot the footage last week, right before the show. I ran out of time, and of course, I realized, oh crap, I can't finish the rest until the next wash cycle, because otherwise there's going to be a big continuity flub. And I've tried to say, I'm starting to get better at making videos. I can move on beyond stupid, simple continuity errors now. So I kind of had to either wait for the next wash cycle or, just reshoot the whole stuff. And I figured, you know what? I already got so much of it done. I'll just wait for the shirt I was wearing last week to become available again. So
yeah, there you go. That's usually the way to go about it. And a lot of people don't actually realize this, but maintaining continuity in videos is actually a thing. And I'm going to give major props to Romney and Alex as they are consistently on camera a lot with a lot of their YouTube content. For me, I kind of dodge the bullet every now and then just because I like making podcasts. I feel more comfortable doing that, but I'm going to give more props to you guys. I can maintain that continuity, but you guys have to do it a whole heck of a lot longer and more frequently than I do. Because you made the choice of stepping in front of the camera. So
we both studied film, so that's kind of why we both know a lot about continuity. It's because we both study filmmaking.
Yeah, pretty much. All right, and let's go ahead and get into the week's events in Geek. So starting with our tech portion of the evening, we have a quick update on a story that we've reported on and off throughout the years, but now, and we've even had questions about this from time to time because we don't hear about it that often anymore, but bring people up to speed. Way back in the first actual episode of Geek News Reviews and Opinions, we reported on the fact that Amy Hennig, who was one of the writers for the Uncharted series, had since left Naughty Dog Studios and actually had been brought in by EA, of all things, specifically Visceral Games, to work on a Star Wars game. This was right when Lucasfilm had announced the partnership with Electronic Arts to do Star Wars games. So at that point, we hadn't gotten the first ever Battlefront trailer. Okay. But like, this was okay. Well, we know Battlefront might be a thing. And then we also got this, and everybody went, oh, Visceral, the people who make Dead Space, they're going to be making a Star Wars game. Then a couple of years down the road, Visceral gets shut down and retooled into everything else. I'm still thoroughly convinced that they're now part of, not Remedy, what's their name? The Titanfall guys who got acquired by Electronic Arts.
So I guess you could say Visceral got eviscerated.
They did, in fact, get eviscerated, and they did not evolve into a necromorph. So that's a good thing, guys. We now can confirm necromorphs are not a thing.
Yes.
So at that point, Amy Hennig was working on that project until Visceral shut down. Now, a lot of people had suspected that either A, when Visceral got shut down, she just kind of went her separate ways, or she got brought into the new game that the Titanfall creators were actually making. Crap, that's gonna drive me nuts. I can't remember the studio's name off the top of my head. But we kind of assumed either she had left or she had been moved over to the new studio and she was still working on it. In fact, that was kind of the running theory about this Jedi Fallen Order. It was basically the Visceral game, but now it was under new management. Amy Hennig has clarified on a lot of this. In fact, just basically saying that, yeah, confirmed, she left the studio. She left the studio to actually go and start her own studio. So her own independent gaming studio. And she left amicably, because she even says in the article that we have here, and I'm going to quote it, "I get along with all those people, considering even the guys on the I consider even the guys on the executive team friends." So, I mean, she parted amicably, but she hasn't been working with EA since January legally. So at that point, she basically went off to go and start her own studio, which we don't actually have the name of it in the article, but she's looking to hire about 6 to 8 people, 15 at the most, and is currently in the early stages of working on a few VR projects. So she's not leaving the game industry or anything like that. She's retooling. She wants to go and do VR projects instead. And I'm just going to go ahead and open up to the panel. What do you guys think about Amy Hennig moving from the Visceral Star Wars game to doing whatever she wants on VR? Good idea, bad idea?
Well, honestly, given that EA is EA, I wouldn't blame anyone for trying to get away from them as quickly as possible. And honestly, it just doesn't surprise me, considering that the game she was working on had its plug pulled. So it's very much a case of, hey, there's not much reason for her to stick around, and it's pretty clear EA wasn't really putting her to use, so it makes sense for her to strike out on her own.
Yeah, especially in this regard, because this actually kind of confirms to me, I don't think that the game that they have is actually the Visceral game. I think that they have a whole new property that they're working on, maybe based off of the Visceral game, but it's not the Visceral game. So at that point, like, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to keep Amy Hennig if it's not the story that they were trying to tell in that aspect. Alex, what is your take on it?
Yeah, I'm not surprised she left, especially considering, the project she was trying to spearhead and helm and work on got axed pretty quickly. It makes sense. She just wants to probably move on and explore some other options. So I wish her the best of luck here.
I did like the fact that she was starting up an indie studio. A lot of people don't necessarily have the courage to be able to do it. It's just one of those things where, like with any indie studio, I hope you know what you're walking into, because it's a nuts thing to try and run even a small indie studio, much less a fairly big one.
Yep.
So, all right, and that, unfortunately, that's pretty much all we have for the story. But yeah, it's confirmed. So she has left EA as of January. She left amicably. Doesn't have any problem with any of the EA staff. And I guess if she wasn't working with her indie studio, she'd come back and work for him again. But right now, her focus is working on these VR projects. So I look forward to seeing what she's going to do in the future. I'm probably not going to play it. I'm just going to go ahead and say it right here and now. But I look forward to what you actually are able to put out. So moving on into the next story, which is the more controversial one, but again, it involves our favorite company, Electronic Arts, specifically BioWare. So I want to take people back on a journey, back to last year when Mass Effect Andromeda launched, and it didn't do very well. Financially, it was a bit of a thud, at least from what EA actually wanted. But people might remember last year when Mass Effect Andromeda came out, the blame game was being played as to what actually caused the lack of sales, what caused the horrible reviews that Mass Effect Andromeda was getting. And EA and BioWare were willing to blame really anybody other than the fact that they did not put out a very good game. And it's very clear that they didn't. Well, a year later, they've decided to do that again. And basically somebody brought up Mass Effect Andromeda in an interview with, who was the original interview with it? I don't think it was Mark. No, it was Mark Dara. Mark Dara, who recently spoke with Game Informer. He was approached with the question on Mass Effect Andromeda, and the question got asked, did Andromeda get a fair shot? Which is where we got a very complicated answer from Dara, one of which that I actually want to put out the tweet that he also had as well to kind of explain it. And here we go. So his official answer was basically, let's see, the review environment was crowded. Nier, Neo, Horizon Zero Dawn, Zelda all launched in Mass Effect Andromeda's window. Each does something better than Mass Effect Andromeda. Again, a flawed game. Well, I'm glad you acknowledge that. And he also went on later on in Twitter, as well as this interview, to basically say, as a result, even systems that are pretty decent get scrutinized against superiorly implemented ones. Does launching in a different window turn 72% into 90? Certainly not. 72 into 77 out of 78? Maybe. So basically what he's doing is he is blaming Zelda, Neo, Nier, Horizon Zero Dawn, all of those games for Mass Effect Andromeda's failure. At least that's how a lot of people perceive it, as well as the launch window that they picked to launch Mass Effect Andromeda. Now, I'm at least going to give him some fair credit in the fact that he was willing to say that, yeah, our game is flawed. But you don't think that part of that was because Andromeda was really buggy at launch? You don't think that the models were really kind of hokey? In fact, I love the article that we have because it brings up one of the hokier models and the dumb things that they actually could do in the game for this article. So, Romney, Alex, what is your take on this whole thing?
I just can't believe the guy can't accept it, and he wants to blame everything else. I mean, first of all, his original quote was before he kind of backpedaled and tried to course correct things. He's like, I think it came out in a really busy window in March, perhaps the busiest window in the history of gaming, where 5 RPGs released in the same month, which is flat out wrong because it was pretty light in March.
No, in fact, 2 of the ones that he mentioned were released in late February. So at that point, like, there were a good couple of weeks for their hype to calm down.
And yeah, then he goes into the whole where he blames Zelda for a bit and is like, it came out the same month as Zelda. Well, that's not exactly an apples to apples comparison because Zelda is an action adventure game first and foremost.
Especially if you consider the Mass Effect audience is about as big as Zelda. It actually could have been a contender if there wasn't already problems on the horizon and people already leaving.
Yeah, the other factor to consider is that Zelda is console exclusive, whereas Mass Effect Andromeda is not.
Was multi-platform. Yeah, and so Andromeda... Now, there are a couple of reasons that I think that it wasn't a contender when the Switch and Breath of the Wild launched. One of the things was, I do know of a lot of Mass Effect fans who were kind of dissuaded after the later trailers that came out, starting to see that, you know, a lot of the problems that they saw from previous Mass Effect games were going to be making their way back. A lot of the models didn't look as polished as they say did in Mass Effect 3, an Xbox 360, PS3, PC game. Previous generation is basically what I'm saying. This looked worse to a lot of people than a previous generation game. And on top of that, all of the other problems that were plaguing EA and BioWare at the time, which was EA ever so much breathing down the neck of BioWare. And it was very clear and very obvious that that's why we got the rush on Andromeda, is if they actually waited maybe another 1 or 2 years, this game could have been a much more refined product. And I've always kind of had the sneaking suspicion that it was rushed out the door.
Yeah, especially when you look here and how apparently that they were, I mean, one of the first things was that EA forced BioWare to use the Frostbite engine, which is designed for first-person shooters, which is not the original engine this game was designed in. Nope. And there's your first problem right there, is that you basically got them being forced to use an engine that is not designed to create a game of Mass Effect's scope. And then it was a case where it was developed within 1.5 years after scrapping many of its ideas that weren't working. And so, yeah, it was hell behind the scenes.
It pretty much was. And look, I'm not necessarily entirely blaming BioWare. They did have EA breathing down the neck and putting in requirements that were absurd to be able to meet with. But at the same time, This is on them. The game looks inferior compared to its predecessor. Controversial endings or not, I look at Mass Effect 3 and Mass Effect Andromeda and go, how on earth is Andromeda next gen? It actually is like a step or two backwards.
Yeah, my favorite comparison, it comes from a YouTube thumbnail where it shows a still from Mass Effect Andromeda and said $500 million budget. And then it shows a still from The Witcher 3 and it literally says vodka and Slavic magic.
So what would Cyberpunk 2077 be then?
Well,
better than Mass Effect Andromeda.
Yeah, probably vodka spiked energy drinks and Slavic magic.
And I hate to be that guy too, because like I wanted Andromeda to be good just as much as anybody else. I remember having basically geek out sessions on early episodes of the podcast where speculation was hot for Andromeda, and me and Aldo would just kind of bounce back and forth, like, where can they go with this series, or where can they go with this? They're going to a brand spanking new galaxy. Like, how big is this game going to be? And we had a lot of that speculation, and then the game comes out, and yeah, my top 10 worst games of the year speaks for itself, and Mass Effect Andromeda was number 2. And it was going to be number 1 for a good portion of the year until Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite came along. So there you go. Yep. So Alex, we kind of interrupted you a couple of times. Other thoughts on it?
Also, I can't wrap my head around this comment, this particular part of his quote. Like, does launching in a different window turn a 72 to a 90? No. 72 to 77, 78, maybe. So basically, he's just trying to kind of like argue. It's like, if we'd been released a little different, maybe we would have gotten a slightly better score. And I'm like, you're still kind of accepting mediocrity. Well, I don't think that's anything to be particularly proud of.
The problem is that I've seen this happen with a couple of other developers, and you've probably seen this in the anime industry a little bit too, Alex, where basically the devs kind of go, well, when you release it, it's kind of up to fate. And I guess fate wasn't on our side. Well, we can blame fate for that. And look, I get his argument that having it released in a different window might have improved it a little bit better. I can guarantee you, unless that release date was 2 years later or 3 years later, it wouldn't have helped your game. It really wouldn't have helped your game.
You guys mentioned Mass Effect has the prestige and of a franchise. It has a huge following. That the fact that the game, and I don't know, I've never played Mass Effect, but I've seen reactions.
Which a lot of Dragon Shadow fans want us to remedy, by the way.
Right. I've seen those reactions, and it's like, yeah, I can definitely see fans not liking this, and it looks to be shockingly under par for what is a very acclaimed and beloved franchise. It's pretty much as if Zelda Breath of the Wild had been so shoddy and thrown together and made of paper clips and string. Yeah, fans would have probably been just as savage towards it too. But it wasn't. It was a really solid, well-develed game.
Well, and the other thing that you also have to consider here, let's just go down this rabbit hole for a second, okay? Because we've mentioned the fan base. I'm just going to bring up, let's just say for the sake of argument, Mass Effect was at the peak of its audience and popularity, which I believe history is kind of told 2 was where it was at its peak, because 3 was where things kind of started to die down, both with the trailers as well as the release. So at its highest peak, this is what would have happened, okay? Nier, brand spanking new franchise, wouldn't have been a contender. Horizon Zero Dawn. That would be the original Nier. New franchise wouldn't have contended because Mass Effect was already there. Horizon Zero Dawn and Neo, again, new franchises, they probably wouldn't have contended unless, you're talking about a Mass Effect fan who's more of a Dark Souls fan than a Mass Effect fan. They're going to go and play Neo because they're interested in that. Zelda, they would have been a legitimate contender at that point. They would, and on top of that, as Romney has pointed out, multi-platform release versus console exclusive, they probably would have gotten the edge on Breath of the Wild. But they didn't, because the audience had been slowly dying down at that point, and Andromeda was not bringing people back. I know that EA had a very stern hope of, given the controversy of 3's endings, that Andromeda would bring people back for a brand spanking new story. and it didn't. People were still pissed. Retake Mass Effect actually resurfaced for a little while. I don't know if people remember that. Retake Mass Effect resurfaced for a little while and basically created a little bit of a movement to not buy Mass Effect Andromeda because of the controversial stuff in 3, and also that BioWare was losing a lot of its polish. That also hurt it. There's a number of other factors, and I'm also just going to bring it up again, Mark Dara. You put out an inferior game. Just acknowledge it and move on. It's what I wish Bethesda would do. Acknowledge that you're having inferior games and go out and fix them, kind of thing. And I'm not saying that you're entirely out of fault. As Romney's brought up, you had circumstances that were out of your control, and EA imposed a lot of crap from you. And that helped hurt it as well. And I really wish EA would learn their damn lesson when it comes to stuff like this. But there were a lot of factors.
It's almost like they have a history of killing companies that are best known for role-playing games.
Origin. Burnout. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened.
I don't know if anybody saw this tweet on my timeline, because I tweeted this like a few days ago. It was this great like cosplay of somebody had like was wearing a suit and he had like a big EA on his face and a briefcase that said like companies I ruined.
Oh, jeez. I want to. Could you send that to me? Like, I want to be able to send that around to people.
Let me go find it. It should still be in my Twitter feed.
Well, and the best part is like the reason that this interview is being brought up is because they're trying to hype their game Anthem, which also has a lot of people very worried. Mainly because it looks like this is EA's answer to Destiny. And people don't really like that. And people are worried with the direction that it's going. And so you're basically bringing up your other controversial release to help hype your current controversial release. How's that working out for you, EA?
By the way, it's in the chat. I found the image and put it in the chat. See if you can pull it up or not.
I will put this also in the RSS feed, people, so you guys can have that too. Oh my gosh. That is glorious. Oh, one more time, Romney. One more time.
Oh my.
Thank you. All right. So, final thoughts before we move on into this one. It's EA and BioWare continuing to F up people. I don't know what else we can say about this. You know, completely take your opinions of Mass Effect as a whole and Anthem out of the picture. Can we all at least acknowledge we're sick and tired of the blame game and we just want you to move on already?
Yeah. Well, that's what happens when you have a company that's run by heartless lizard people.
Heartless Blizzard people?
Lizard, not Blizzard.
Okay, I was going to say, like, Blizzard people. Well, some of the Blizzard teams care. I'm starting to wonder about the Overwatch team, but... I mean,
unless this is corporate espionage, in which it is Blizzard people specifically sabotaging EA to make their games look better.
Possibly. Maybe Origin got their true vengeance and the Guardian was actually real and he came out and claimed EA as the avatar.
Yeah.
And sent out all the good people to Pagan.
Well, either that or Richard Garriott just gave the CEO of EA Mondane's skull and he didn't realize you're not supposed to use Mondane's skull, and now the EA's world is ending.
Well, he certainly didn't give him the Armageddon spell, I can tell you that much. No, that went to .hack. Anyway, so moving on. So the final story that we actually have, and you guys came out in droves to be able to let me know about this the last couple of weeks. I was already aware of it, but thank you for sending me the link because this week it was actually hard to find it again. But yeah, so speaking of heartless game companies that want to destroy everybody into oblivion, Bethesda has decided to exercise their legal arm once again. People might not necessarily remember this, but Bethesda's kind of known for suing people, especially when their copyrights are involved. They immediately go to the lawsuit angle. They don't even approach people on being able to remedy it. My perfect example is it Notch that owns Mojang? Is that the owner?
He was the founder. He's no longer with Mojang though.
Yeah, but I think it was with Mojang at the time when they were going to come out with a game called Scrolls, and Bethesda decided to sue them over the name Scrolls because Skyrim was coming out very soon.
Yeah,
so
and there was also the lawsuit regarding a PC game called Operation Fallout that they also sued over, even though it was of a completely different genre and had no relation to the franchise and the fact that the word Fallout is an actual word.
Again, notorious reputation for taking things out of context. In fact, I'm actually going to give Notch a little bit of credit in his response to Bethesda, which was basically to have them resolve things over a game of Quake. That was actually a really good statement. I wish I could have dug it out for this story. But Bethesda is now officially suing Warner Brothers for, quote, a blatant ripoff of Fallout Shelter. So if people don't know what Fallout Shelter is, it was a hype game that came out just before the release of Fallout 4. As a mobile game where you can basically manage your shelter and be able to take on various tasks to basically kill the window, or to kill time for the window for Fallout 4 to be released. The funny thing is that after Fallout 4 was released, Shelter still was very popular. So much so that they're actually going to re-release it on consoles very, very soon. And in this case, Warner Brothers has actually put out an official response for this. And what they're to bring people up to speed, what they're claiming is the ripoff of Fallout Shelter. There is a Westworld game that's being developed by Behavior Interactive that runs very similar in design and artwork and coding to Fallout Shelter. So here is Warner Brothers' response to Bethesda's lawsuit. As one of the world's leading creators of intellectual property, including the groundbreaking television series Westworld, Warner Brothers has a deep respect for intellectual property rights. As such, the assertions by Bethesda Softworks that Warner's Westworld mobile game improperly used source code from Bethesda's Fallout Shelter are as surprising as they are unsubstantiated. Warner Brothers has been assured by the game developer Behavior Interactive that Bethesda's allegations are untrue and that none of Bethesda's code was used in the Westworld game. Moreover, contrary to Bethesda's baseless accusation, Warner Brothers at no time induced Behavior to use the Fallout Shelter code in Westworld. So basically what they're saying is it looks similar enough to Fallout Shelter that we're suing you because of the popularity.
Well, sort of. To kind of explain the actual crux of the lawsuit, again, time for Legal Romney to explain things for people.
We really need like some kind of a bumper for that, like Legal Romney.
Something like that. But point being, the crux, basically the main allegation that Bethesda is leveling against Warner Brothers is that it hired the studio Behavior to develop the game Fallout Shelter, and then is alleging that Warner Brothers hired that same studio to create a game of a similar style using the same source code based on their television reimagining of the film Westworld. And the main crux of the argument is that the games are so similar, and even allege that it's using the source code from Fallout Shelter, which, unlike a lot of other things with games, source code is something you can copyright. And that is basically what Bethesda's alleging, saying, hey, you hired the studio that made this really super popular game for our company to make a super similar game for your company that is also super popular, and thus why they're alleging allegations such as unfair competition by effectively stating that the game is a ripoff of Fallout Shelter. And that is basically Bethesda's allegation in a nutshell, is that they're saying, hey, this game is very similar, you hired the same studio, you're using our source code, so yeah, what the hell?
Well, the other thing too, and I've actually got this shared up on my screen for our live chat. I'll probably even put some kind of a link to it in the RSS feed. But here's a comparison. So on the left, you have Fallout Shelter. And then right next to it, you have the assets for the Westworld game. I can already tell you the background is kind of suspect, but I don't necessarily believe that they are the exact same. But the model right here is where I start questioning things, because I do know that Fallout Shelter was based very deeply in Pip-Boy and Fallout artwork. And so at that point, it looks very different in its person art assets than this right here. This actually looks like it might be ripping off other mobile games like Kingdom Hearts Kai or Key more than Fallout Shelter, because the artwork looks a lot more similar to that than to Fallout Shelter itself. And then the other thing, I completely forgot to mention this, but the same company, Behavior Interactive, is the ones that developed Fallout Shelter, and therefore they're basically saying they recycled and repeated with this Westworld game. I now seeing screenshots of it, I suspect that's not the case. I think they scrapped it and went with what they had. That's at least my guess.
Yes, and that's the thing. With mobile games, there are a lot of similarities across a lot of different games. And even the IGN article we're referring to raises the question, why isn't Bethesda suing Behavior for a breach of contract? But it's the quote itself pretty much is telling, where it says, Warner Brothers has a direct financial interest in Behavior's infringing activities through the resulting reduced costs and expedited development of the Westworld mobile game.
Yeah.
And so basically what it is basically shorthand saying, oh, hey, well, Warner Brothers is the bigger fish with more money to lose, then they had more to gain from ripping us off, so we're going after the bigger fish instead of this tinier middleman.
And then the other thing that you have to consider in this, because Romney kind of put it out to a T, this is actually also Bethesda Softworks' motif in this regard. They will go for the bigger fish with the bigger money in a lot of these lawsuits if they have that available. And in this case, they do. But that's why Mojang was such a weird thing. They're not entirely against suing the little guy either.
Yep, and that's kind of just what it is here. As someone who's played neither game, honestly, any case like this would set a very dangerous precedent, because then you'd have King Games suing, well, pretty much every single mobile developer in existence for any game that bears any sort of resemblance to Candy Crush Saga, so much so I wouldn't be surprised if they tried suing the people who developed Bejeweled, the game that inspired it.
Yeah, and since you brought up Bejeweled, which is PopCap, like a good 5 to 7 years ago, you would have had PopCap suing a bunch of people for their mobile games looking similar to Peggle, to Bejeweled, to all of that stuff.
Yeah, and so looking at this, it's a case I can maybe see where some of the idea comes from, but even then, the whole notion of shelter-based games are nothing new. They've even existed before Bethesda even had control of the Fallout franchise.
No, there was a similar game that came out to this, I want to say 5-6 years before. There was a Star Trek-based game. The reason that failed was because it was flooded with microtransactions. So at that point, but it was similar as far as I'm concerned. It looked very similar to what Fallout Shelter was doing.
Yeah.
So
so looking at this, it's a case this is probably not going to go too far. I mean, although Bethesda is going to go after Warner Brothers, the thing is, and I keep saying it, lawsuits are financial wars of attrition. Bethesda may think they may have a strong case, but Warner Brothers has the team of lawyers, and so if Bethesda gets really aggressive, Warner Brothers is within their power to drag this out long enough to basically bankrupt Bethesda. And so they're probably going to try to force some sort of out-of-court settlement. That's probably the best case scenario here.
But if somebody was going to do it, it would be Warner Brothers. Because as you kind of said, they can outlast them financially.
Yep, because Warner Brothers has a lot more investigate. I mean, they control DC, they have the movie studios, television. Basically, Bethesda is picking a fight with a sleeping dragon that's starting to open its eye. If they keep poking any further, they're going to get roasted.
Yep. Alex, you've been kind of quiet on this one. What's your take on it? I know that you're not necessarily into the mobile gaming era, and you're not necessarily a Bethesda fan, but I'm pretty sure you've at least seen this in anime as well as other media where a big guy will sue a little guy over something as simple as a word. What's your take on the lawsuit here?
I don't know, because just based on the screenshot alone, it doesn't look that similar. It does. I mean, just the slider comparing left to right. There's nothing that particularly damning that says, "Oh yeah, this is exactly the same assets, only flipped." It will come down to, okay, what is in the source code, and that's what it's going to come down to. What is in the source code, and is it really a direct copy versus just are they just maybe recycling a few things, but not using the exact same code. And I know source codes can be copied, but it seems a little weird. I'm guessing that means Bethesda would have the propriety ownership over the source code for that.
Yes, they pretty much guarantee they have all of the rights for any of their properties.
Yes.
Okay.
And here's the thing. It is actually good etiquette as a game developer or as any kind of a developer that when you start something brand spanking new, and whether it's similar or not, you scrap everything. You put it all in a file and you keep it for financial purposes and all that stuff, but you never usually go back to those engine assets unless you have a reason to be able to do that kind of thing.
Like if you're using an engine that is licensed by multiple companies, like the Unreal Engine or the Unix engine, those are engines that a lot of companies use. And so if you have assets built in those engines, then those you can probably hold on to because the license for the Unreal Engine isn't owned by any one company, whereas the code for Fallout Shelter, at least based on what Bethesda is alleging, if it's copyrighted and Bethesda filed that copyright, then that would mean Bethesda owns it. This was the same thing we saw with the Bethesda and John Carmack lawsuit of, I think it was earlier this year or last year, where they were alleging the same thing, where John Carmack allegedly took source code from Bethesda to develop some of the VR properties for the Oculus Rift.
Yeah. Because, yeah, that was actually going to be another thing because you were bringing up the Carmack suit, right?
Yep.
Do we think this is going to affect that lawsuit at all? Like, can Warner Brothers bring it up as any kind of thing to fling at them? There was a loss for Carmack, but I don't think he's really involved anymore.
No, I doubt it will actually come up at all since we're dealing...
Is he running id anymore? No, he's off doing his own thing.
Yeah, that was the reason of the lawsuit, was that it was as John Carmack was leaving id Software, which was owned by Bethesda, to develop things for Oculus.
Oh, that's right. Bethesda was the one that sued him, and they won. Okay, yeah, so, okay, crap. I am completely remembering that lawsuit differently.
This is why I'm the legal expert.
Exactly. And the problem is these lawsuits have so many twists and turns to them that I can't keep them in my head anymore. But yeah, I was actually kind of wondering, like, would this affect things? But no, Carmack has been separated from id for a while.
Yeah, plus it's different between companies suing companies as opposed to companies suing individuals. Now, Bethesda did try to go after Facebook, but they didn't get very far because I believe there was just a few different technicalities. But to kind of get back on point, the Carmack lawsuit's not going to have any bearing. It's probably not even going to come up since that's not really neither here nor there, since it's highly doubtful that John Carmack is even involved with the development of the Westworld game. So honestly, I see this going one of two ways. It's either going to get settled out of court, or if it does go to trial, Bethesda's got more to lose here.
Yeah, It's one of those things that I would actually like to see Bethesda kind of get that stern boot to their butt, because they really are too quick to pull out the lawsuit card. So that's concerning on a lot of levels. But this is just another frivolous lawsuit as far as I'm concerned. And the assets I think are highly suspect here. But final thoughts before we move on into the entertainment portion of the evening, because, well, there really isn't a whole lot to go into because they've just officially declared the lawsuit. They're not necessarily done with it yet. And I actually believe Romney. I think Warner Brothers can win this fight and are probably going to be rushing to settle.
Yeah, especially that although Warner Brothers has more money, they're also not in the greatest position considering, well, where they are with the DC movie universe and how much money they've lost on that, as well as some of their games also not having performed as well as they had hoped. They're doing better, but again, Warner Brothers has more. It's very much a case where Warner Brothers is the side of the army that, yeah, they have more soldiers, but some of them came down with the plague a little prior to the battle. So they've got the soldiers there. They're just not really standing. But still, like you said, they're probably going to try to force a settlement out of court because, well, taking this to trial, one, would waste both companies' time and resources, and two, would be very, very costly, which is something I'm pretty sure Bethesda would want to avoid as well.
Yep. Final thoughts on this one, Alex? Do you have any?
No.
We'll probably report on the lawsuit as things go on, but let's go ahead and move on into the entertainment portion of the evening, and probably the biggest story in the entertainment portion, as listeners brought this to us, as well as I was able to track it down on Twitter, and Alex found it too, and yeah, it's got to be talked about. So I want to say Monday was when this particular picture went up online, but Star Wars fans made a bit of a declaration of sorts earlier this week, as they have decided it's officially time to start rebellion against Disney, or at least to declare it, and released a huge image, basically being their declaration of independence, as simply stating, and I'm not even going to read it, dude, guy. There's like 8 paragraphs of this thing, but basically saying, as we, the fans of Star Wars, are tired of you. Or actually, you know what? I'm going to bring up the tweet because it officially sums it up. So this is from Azula on Twitter, but I think one of the people who did sign it or agrees with it. Today, We, the fans of Star Wars, declare our rebellion from Lucasfilm. We are tired of being spat on, told that the franchise we so adore is not for us anymore, and of our favorite characters being mistreated by the directors of the new movies. We call upon Disney for a change. And it caused a tad bit of controversy online. I saw a lot of people talking about it on Facebook and Twitter. I think it got brought up a couple times on YouTube and Instagram and a couple of other places like that. So, we've been asked to address our feelings on the matter. I'm just going to go ahead and be honest right here and now. I looked over this. I actually read it word for word. And I read it in a groggy state. So that should tell you that I'm dedicated to what I do. Because I was in a groggy state, and I swear to you guys, if I understood half of it, then I would be giving myself a pat on the back. But the problem is it's so written to be the Declaration of Independence. You guys don't even realize, like, that's what the guy was trying to aim for, and it's kind of pointless to do it. But here's what I would basically say to you guys as a sum up. This whole thing is kind of useless aside from the last paragraph. And this is how I would literally write it from there on in. Dear Star Wars, we're sick and tired of you not listening to us. We're officially voting with our dollar from here on in, period. That's it. That's what this is basically saying. Okay. And I even responded on Twitter. No, that was a Facebook response. Basically saying in the comment section, so you're saying you're going to vote with your dollar then? Okay.
Yeah.
Alex, Alex, why don't you go ahead and start? Because I think Romney's got some things to say.
It is an overstatement of basically saying we're tired of the direction Disney's taking this, and we're done. And fine, that's fine to say, but my God, did you really need like a long 8-paragraph? If that, I think it's even more. Did you need this really ridiculously long manifesto to state that? I think the Twitter post says it all pretty just fine. It's like, we the fans of today, we the fans of Star Wars declare our rebellion from Lucasfilm. We're tired of being spat on, told the franchise we adore is not for us anymore, and our favorite characters being mistreated by the directors of the new movies. We call upon Disney for change.
I just read that.
That sums it up pretty fine.
Yeah,
you don't need this
exactly.
You don't need this legalese document to say that. It's
not even legalese, guys. It's basically them trying to recreate the Declaration of Independence, because guess what's happening next week in the United States? And I'm not kidding, guys. Like I'll show you guys the image up on my screen, but you could easily take out 80% of this document and just rewrite it as, Dear Star Wars, we're not buying your movies, we're not buying your toys anymore until you officially listen to us. Here is the official declaration, okay? So seeing that on Twitter is pretty big. Seeing that on Facebook's pretty big. But this is basically, so I'm even going to say like this paragraph right here at the end and this last statement, okay? Because that's kind of interesting. That's clever writing. This is all you needed. All of this can go. All of it can go. That being said, sorry, Alex, I interrupted.
No, keep going. I'm just allergies are kicking my butt. So
no worries. So Romney, let her rip, buddy. Let her rip.
Well, for people who are expecting the Romney Rant Train 2.0, we're going to try doing something a bit more calmly. So no need for a pillow, no me shouting in the camera, red in the face. But I will say this. This is probably the first world problem that I have ever seen conceived in the first world. Considering all of the other atrocities that are currently going on in our country, even this frickin' week, that there are a lot of legitimate reasons to be upset.
Well, this joined them too. That was the weird part. This joined them.
Well, yeah, it's just looking at this, like, of all the actual atrocities. I mean, I don't mean to get political, but it's like, oh, like children being separated from their families at the border. A company made a movie I didn't like. I'm gonna throw all my rage at the company that made a movie I didn't like.
Well, I mean, to be fair, this is basically the boiling point. This is something that's been going on for a while now. But I see your point nonetheless.
Yeah, and so that's my first gripe. The second gripe, and I believe Rian Johnson, now keep in mind, we all had our own opinions of The Last Jedi. There are some things that I disliked, But the way Rian Johnson puts it, and it was in response to a fan, and it basically, the fan by the name of Synchronic Design said, I appreciate the response. My main gripes are that you abandon the spirit and heart of Star Wars in favor of your own ideas, opinions, and mindset rather than continuing a 40-year legacy.
Which is pretty much the same stuff they levied against JJ.
Yeah, and it also says, like, rather than continuing a 40-year legacy, Skywalker and the rest of almost everything the film subverted all that was. And here's Rian Johnson's response, and I believe it's the most telling. And it says, for me, The Last Jedi 100% distills what the spirit and heart of Star Wars has been in my life. But yes, it is personal. It's a certain point of view, and it has to be. The originals were personal for George Lucas. That's why they're alive. Star Wars films will truly betray the heart and spirit of the originals if they lose that. And that's pretty telling. And it actually even continues. He goes on to say, like, that they will lose that and become soulless, clean homages. But being alive means being messy, and it means every film won't line up with exactly what every fan is expecting or wants. I'm sorry The Last Jedi didn't line up with your own certain point of view. Really, honestly, I am. May the Force be with you. Now, here's the thing. This actually makes sense. In order for a franchise like Star Wars to evolve, it needs to change. It needs to undergo those upheavals because that's the way life and the world works. Remember how upset everyone was with the prequel trilogy and how it didn't meet up with those expectations and how it ruined Star Wars and ruined people's childhoods? And that was with the original creator at the helm.
And unlimited. Like, unlike the original trilogy where he was being held back a little bit, as Romney's pointed out in previous podcasts, this was him unhinged. This was him with no restriction or anything like that. His vision was realized.
Yes, and so honestly, and I'm kind of in the camp, and Mark Hamill even's come out in statements of this where, yeah, I may not have liked certain aspects at first, but when you actually take the time to think about the film, and it was a tweet because I follow Mark Hamill on Twitter because who doesn't? But Mark Hamill kind of even created a good point where, all right, back in the 60s, people who were part of the peace and love generation were under the idea of, oh, once we're in power, there'll be no more racism, no more war. And then once they get in power, things don't actually go the way they expect. Or as Luke himself said to Rey, this won't go the way you expect it to. And that's exactly what happened. Luke thought he would be able to fix and remedy the mistakes the Jedi Order had made. But things didn't go the way he expected them to. And in a sense, in his bid to avoid the cycle repeating itself, he inevitably jump-started it when he tried to kill Ben Solo. And that's the important thing here. And that's actually what I like about The Last Jedi, where it's like failure is the greatest teacher. And so honestly, it's a case here, this whole rebellion, I mean, vote with your dollar, that's fine, but you don't need to do any grandstanding about it. You don't have to point out or design some arbitrary logo.
This is more of a movement of like when somebody puts up a trailer and you're that one guy in the comments is like, that's cool, I'm not really interested. I mean, I actually like our statement a little bit better, which me and Alex have kind of bounced back and forth here and there, is that from here on in, because we're kind of just as frustrated. Like, I like The Last Jedi, but I see the problems there. I see the faulty storyline and all that. And Solo, as much as I liked it, I wasn't asking for it. And the only reason that I was remotely interested was because of the trailers. So at that point, like, Alex and me have kind of bounced this idea during our recording sessions. Like, I'll watch the trailers, but if you haven't sold me, I'm not seeing it.
Yeah,
because that's what you should do.
Yeah, and that's what I've been doing. People are wondering, why haven't I reviewed movies? Well, that's because that's what I'm doing now. I'm not wasting the $20 a week to see a movie every week. Yeah. If there's a movie that's got my attention, I'll go see it when I get the time. And honestly, with where I am with Star Wars, I'm just of the opinion of, I'm going to watch episode 9, and then once that story is concluded, I'm pretty much done because, well, the story I cared about is done. It's time to move on. But here, it's just a case of, people, it's just a movie. There are more important things in the world. Vote with your dollar. That's perfectly fine. If you don't like something, don't give it money, but don't call yourselves a rebellion. And plus, here's a minor nitpick. It's not rebellion from. It's rebellion against. You don't rebel from something, you rebel against something. So that already tells you that they don't even know grammar.
That was just added for dramatic flair, as far as I'm concerned. That's why I'm saying, like, the first 80% of this document is dramatic flair. That's why you wanted to do it. You wanted to be able to put a Star Wars touch on for crying out loud, the Declaration of Independence. But, you know, like I said, if I rewrote this, I take your last paragraph because I think that pretty much sums it up and go, dear Star Wars, we're done paying for this and we're done with all the crap that you're saying. We're voting with our dollar from here on in. Here's hoping your trailers look good, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because that's the better way to go about it. And this actually got me a little bit of hot water because I put out my opinion on Twitter and I put out my opinion on Facebook, and some people took it as I'm anti-Star Wars, and some of them took I was pro Kathleen Kennedy. And guys, here's my honest opinion on the matter. It's exactly what I stated. I've been saying it for years. Vote with your damn dollar. If you don't like what you're seeing in front of you, if you don't think that it matches the vision that you had intended, don't go see it. But Jack, it's going to be successful anyway. Make a stand. Don't see it yourself.
Yeah, and honestly, it's a case of, oh, it's going to be successful anyway. Yeah, exactly. That's not going. Whether it also just goes to show whether or not you see it is not really going to change anything. So it's very much a case. There's kind of this principle when it comes to Zen philosophy is that you can only focus on. Basically, it's a case of accept what can't be changed and change what can be changed. Just don't stress out over things you can't control. And, well, Disney, Lucasfilm, they don't care about the diehard fanboys. They care about the regular, like, average moviegoer that are going to pay to see the movies, because that's the bigger slice of the pie. And honestly, Mother's Basement, I keep quoting so many people tonight, but Mother's Basement pretty much put it best when he was talking about his Death Note review. And it basically stated that it's better for a film to try and fail than to fail to try. With at least Rian Johnson, it had some problems, but it had that enthusiasm to it. It clearly had a story it wanted to tell and a reason to exist. It wasn't just a fan indulging in mindless fan fiction. Now, granted, some people could argue that that was The Force Awakens was, but even then, I would argue against it because, again, even J.J. Abrams had a story he wanted to tell and had a reason to make the movie.
Well, the other problem is that eventually George Lucas wasn't going to make these things. Let's just say for the sake of argument, Disney didn't buy things out and George Lucas was going to make these 3 episodes. It wasn't necessarily a guarantee that he would be the director of it. He'd probably be the executive producer, so he'd have some say, but he could have hired on a completely different director for this. In fact, he worked from what I understand, when Force Awakens was happening, JJ kept George in the loop, and JJ kind of took a lot of the ideas that George had and adapted them to his own, but that's the difference. George's vision and JJ's vision and Ryan's vision are all going to be different from each other.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like a mythology that changes from person to person who's telling the story.
Sorry, we interrupted you, Alex. What?
Actually, if you actually read, they pretty much tossed all of George's ideas from when they went into this new trilogy. So pretty much nothing of his.
I could have sworn they kept a lot of the ideas, like keeping the original cast and all that.
No, that's purely a business decision at this point, I think.
I'll double check that, but
when you look at the original idea of George Lucas's trilogy, which involved the microscopic world involving the wills, there are some things. I think the only thing they took from George's original notes was the notion of a main female protagonist who was force sensitive, and that's about it.
But again, my point still stands. George's vision, JJ's vision, Ryan's vision, Phil Lord and Chris Miller's vision, Colin Trevorrow's vision, all are going to be different. And I actually like how Ryan put it. This is his point of view. This is how he saw Star Wars. And so at that point, but people acknowledge that's a different person's point of view.
At the same time, we've had 2 trilogies prior to this that have maintained a consistency, sort of, right? It's been Star Wars essentially is the second original Marvel Cinematic Universe, because there already was the original Marvel Cinematic Universe with the Universal monster movies, and Star Wars was kind of that. I mean, we had the original trilogy, then we had the prequels, and whatever, love them, hate them, there is the consistency and there is the balance between the prequels and the original trilogy.
Sure.
And I can definitely feel the fan frustration that the new trilogy feels like it kind of has derailed and kind of has gone off on a completely direction that doesn't make any sense. And again,
there's
I agree.
There's a pocket of the fan base who thinks the prequel trilogies already did that.
Yeah, I agree. I think the declaration is superfluous, a little ridiculous, and I think the tweet was more than enough. You didn't need this giant manifesto here. But it's like, but it's like I kind of get it, and we're still coming off the Ghostbusters debacle where, where they try to kind of pin it as us versus them kind of thing. If you don't like this movie, then you must be with this kind of group, and people are sick of that. And
yeah, but that's just because every angle on Twitter and every angle on Facebook these days, if it's a cause like that, it's us versus them. If it wasn't Star Wars, it was Michael Bay and Transformers.
And it's, I mean, it's not just like, oh, you're a fan, you're not a fan, whatever. It's like, it's getting to people's own where they stand politically. Obviously Romney had a tap dance around the politics, but it's at this point it can't be helped anymore because it's like politics is beginning to invade our daily lives every second that we breathe.
Which I wish that would stop, by the way.
It won't.
Yeah.
It won't, but I think it should stop.
And I don't want to necessarily say it's all Disney Lucasfilm fanning these flames, but I don't think they're helping. I know, right? Frankly, this most recent tweet by Ryan Johnson was surprising to me because like he's been kind of the one to fan the flames a little bit of the kind of I don't want to say he's thrown out. I haven't read every tweet he's ever done, but there are those people that keep fanning these flames saying, oh, you don't like Rey? Well, then you're clearly someone who's with the alt-right, and you can't stand a strong, independent woman in a role.
Which is not true.
Even though there are quite a bit of legitimate complaints leveled against Rey as a character, and I can see why people are getting a little fed up. But it's
one of those things. I don't know if you noticed this on social media, but remember when Wonder Woman came out and people hated how idealistic she was? Guys, Rey was just as idealistic in Force Awakens as Wonder Woman was in her debut film. And nobody complained about Rey. I always found that funny. We complained about Wonder Woman being this idealistic, I've got to kill the bad guy. But that's what Rey was in Force Awakens. She felt like things had to happen in their own way, and she had her heroes, and they had to stand out. And yeah, that idealism was still there for Rey. The interesting part of Last Jedi is she doesn't have that anymore because now all of her heroes have basically been wrecked at this point. So at that, sorry, I didn't mean to go off on a rant there, but it's like, holy crap, guys.
So, yeah, I think at the end of the day, we all certainly agree. It is a movie. Vote with your dollar. Don't go see it. And, of course, express your opinion. Say, I don't like where this is going. Fine. And leave it at that. And I guess to
join me and Mike against John Boyega in Star Wars Battlefront, because that is funny as hell. Like the last couple of Battlefront statements he's ever made, I've been like, yeah, I'm not interested. Sorry, John. And then another one that I actually nailed him for was like, oh my gosh, this hero got added. I'm like, when is Captain Phasma going to be added so you could finally fight her?
Yeah. So I just want to top it off because I think this is a quote from Mel Gibson, what he said in regards to making the Passion of the Christ. Kind of puts me back on my heels a little bit. I expect some level of turbulence because when one delves into religion and politics, people's deeply held beliefs, you're going to stir things up. But it was surprised to have shots being fired over the bow while I was still filming, and then have various loud voices in the press, people who hadn't seen the work really slinging mud. And I think that kind of sums up where Star Wars is right now. It feels like Disney, maybe not, and even if they're not, then somebody by proxy is doing it, that they're touching people's nerves because they're trying to say because they are tapping into people's nerves of politics, which, is always a touchy subject. And you're saying, oh, and they're making it a political thing when it doesn't need to be. And it's pissing people off. And I guess that's where I stand.
And final thoughts on that. Please listen to me, our fellow listeners, and please start making a change here. Get politics out of our fandoms. They don't help.
Yeah. I believe there's actually a quote from the prequels that also kind of summarizes another underlying issue here, where people are feeling like they're being disconnected from Star Wars because of how it's changing. Well, I believe Yoda put it best. Learn to let go that which you are afraid to lose.
Or you could have just gone with failure is the greatest teacher.
Yeah, well,
but
that's a bit more poignant.
So there is one other thing that we need to address with the story before we can move on. And this is actually something that listeners reached out to me specifically. Is I know this is stupid, but we're going to bring it up because people have brought up in the past that I've knocked change.org petitions numerous times because it doesn't matter how many signatures you get. It doesn't mean that you're going to change anything. Now with an official declaration, is this going to change anything at Disney or Lucasfilm or Star Wars or any of that? And I'm going to go ahead and let you guys answer first before I unfortunately shatter this guy's dreams.
Well,
the declaration, probably not. We've been talking
I'm pretty
about
sure
this.
they've read it, but they're not taking it seriously.
I kind of doubt they've even read it. I mean, it's at this point, there's already the rumor mill turning about saying that Kathleen Kennedy may retire, quote unquote, resign from Lucasfilm. We don't have a confirmation nor denial on that fact, but the wheels of this are probably already in motion.
To give people context, that's just as much as in the air as when we were hearing early this year that Disney was going to drop EA. Okay. It still hasn't happened yet, and I doubt that it will.
Yeah. Honestly, there's just one easy way to summarize this, and I like to call it man falling down a cliff. No!
Damn it, Romney. I wanted to quote Dr. Cox. Man falling down a cliff. No! So, yeah, my thoughts on the matter is very simple. Okay. Again, I don't agree entirely with the statement. You could sum it down and say you're voting with your dollar. I'm entirely okay with that, guys. Like, I'm there with you. I'm probably going to go see episode 9, but Rian Johnson's trilogy, I'm going to wait until I see trailers before I even make any kind of assessment on the matter. But do I think this declaration is going to affect anything at Disney, Lucasfilm, any of that? Absolutely not. I do think that Kathleen and a couple of other people have at least become aware of this statement that has come out. Okay. Just because I have heard the concept that Kathleen Kennedy does not follow, but like she does keep tabs on her detractors, and there's a lot of them on YouTube. So, I mean, you can do that. It's a public space. You can keep track of all the people who complain about you. So I'm pretty sure she's at least aware, if not actually read the statement, but I don't think it matters. Okay. If Kathleen leaves Disney or Lucasfilm, it's going to be because of other reasons other than this, unfortunate little rebellion that's going on. Because the bottom line is that it is a little rebellion. You don't represent every single Star Wars fan. Don't act as if you do. A lot of us are just as fed up as you are, but we decided to not have to go through 8 paragraphs of dramatic flair and just decided, okay, well, here's my wallet and this is how I make my choices. And that's what we're going to do from here. And so overall, this really isn't going to affect things. What's going to affect things is the almighty dollar. Okay. As we've seen, Solo has kind of pushed a lot of these things in the process. I don't think Solo is going to change anything, but the next 2 Star Wars films that fail just like it did, that would affect things. That would get Kathleen Kennedy fired. That would get all of this other stuff happening and probably even new movies with new directions. Okay. But that's what's going to change Disney's mind on the matter, is when it's not financially able to do what they want it to do. If Marvel Cinematic Universe does a lot more than Star Wars, Disney will literally consider putting Star Wars on the shelf. Okay. That's the way that that's going to go.
Mm-hmm.
But now that I've ranted into oblivion, moving on into the next story that we have, which is another one where people think it's sparking a lot of change. And I don't mean to be rude, but I still remain skeptical. So the Academy has been very busy this past week as they have sent out basically, to put this in WoW terms, they started up a new guild and they've been sending out petitions and invites all over the place. Okay. So the Academy has invited 928 new members, all of which we're not going to list here. Alex, no, we're not listing all 900 members. It's not happening, but we will mention some of the bigger names that were actually brought into that. So first of all, we do have Pokemon and Westworld, or Pokemon. Jiminy Christmas, what's wrong with me? Pocahontas and Westworld star Irene Bedard. Koryanka Kilcher. If I'm murdering these names, I am so sorry. Wind River star Tantu Cardinal. Many Spanish speakers, including Javier Camara, Meloni Diaz, and Marta Atura. And we also have several Black Panther grads, which is Denai Guerrera, Daniel Kaluuya, Daniel Kaluuya, Kendrick Lamar, and even a bunch of Asian stars, including one of my favorites, one of my game boos, Takeshi Kaneshiro, Andy Lau, Anil Kapoor, and Shu Rukh Khan. We also have Shah Rukh Khan. We also have a bunch of TV names: Christine Baranski, Randall Park, Ann Dowd, Evan Rachel Wood, Jean Smart, Allison Brie, and Mindy Kaling. From the comedy side, we have Amy Schumer, Dave Chappelle, Harry Shearer, Sarah Silverman, George Lopez, Tiffany Haddish. Which one, Lopez or Tiffany Haddish?
Lopez.
Yeah. I'm going to join you on that one. New directors, including Sean Baker, Michelle Gondry, Luca Guadagnino. Okay. Nadine Labaki, Angela Robinson, Alice Rohrwacher, retired filmmaker Bellatar, and Chloe Zhao. Now, also two other women who have done much for documentaries have also been brought into the Academy. We have Professor B. Ruby Rich, and Netflix documentary chief Lisa Nishimura. And I hate that the story brings up freaking Roman Polanski. Just don't do it. Now, the other names that we should mention, because if we don't, Alex will literally kill us. Makoto Shinkai, aka the director for
Your Name.
Thank you.
Children Who Chase Lost Voices, 8 centimeters per second, or
we also have Mamoru
5 centimeters per second.
We have Mamoru Hosoda. He is also going to be joining the Academy. And then another one that you actually brought up in a later article, which for some reason I didn't actually put into the agenda. So we also have Yoko Kanno joining the Academy. And if you guys don't know, she is the composer for pretty much everything in Cowboy Bebop, right?
Yeah, Cowboy Bebop, Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex, to be exact.
Macross Plus.
Macross Plus, Macross Frontier. Or maybe she didn't do the score. I think she might have only done songs. I'll have to double check that one. But yeah, she's a very, very well-known composer in the anime realms.
Yes, and then there was also another director name in there that I would like you to explain, Alex, because I think you know who it is. Sunao Katabuchi.
I don't actually know him, so...
Oh, darn it. Romney, do you know him?
Let me look up the name. I'm trying to see where it is. Let's see. Is it under producers?
It's in here somewhere. But yeah, so they basically brought in a bunch of people from the anime industry, and that's equally interesting.
Oh, okay. Never mind. I've not seen the movie, but he directed In This Corner of the World, which is a movie about Hiroshima leading up to the bombing. So, yeah.
Yep. So
oddly enough, they even added Paul Young, the guy behind Song of the Sea and Secret of the Cows, which are two 2D animated films that came to us from Ireland.
Yes. So that's also a lot of people to add into the Academy. Now, Romney, I was hoping that you could kind of explain what a lot of these new inductees mean, or, I mean, Alex, you could chime in if you want to, but what does all of these new members mean for the Academy?
Basically, what it means is that these are people who now have the ability to vote on both decisions of the Academy, whether it's decisions to expel certain people, like how they recently expelled Roman Polanski, as well as deciding on both nominees and who gets the Oscars. Now, that's the idea, is that by adding these new members, they're hoping that, hey, we'll get some fresh blood that can help decide who win these Academy Awards and hopefully get people to watch our telecast. Please, we really need you to watch it because we're sinking so much money into this that it is hurting us badly.
Yeah,
but that's more or less what this means and they're hoping to curry favor, especially with the jilted and annoyed anime fans, by bringing in the likes of Makoto Shinkai. That way they can say, see, we brought anime people. Will you please watch our telecast now?
Yep. Now, I'm going to go ahead and let Alex answer this question because he actively watches the Academy Awards and all of that. Yeah. Is this going to change anything? This is actually a listener question. Are all of these new names being brought into the Academy? What's that going to change?
It could be everything. It could be nothing. I can totally, I get the cynicism and skepticism from you guys. I understand it. Believe me. I know the Academy is anything but perfect, and I know there's a lot of that bullshit that goes on. It's just, I like what the idea behind the concept of the award is. I know that unfortunately it's mired by a lot of crap. And also keep in mind right now, these are invites, so that we have to wait and see who accepts.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but like what the award's supposed to represent, we don't have a problem with. Like, this is supposed to represent excellence in film and in acting and all of that stuff. We don't have that issue. The problem is that the awards themselves have become basically a pat ourselves on the back awards. And that's, to me, that's degraded what the Oscar is supposed to mean for a lot of people. Like, this is supposed to be the greatest, aside from like a Lifetime Achievement Award, this is supposed to be the greatest accolade an actor, director, producer, makeup artist could ever hope to achieve.
Right. And again, remember, with the decline in movie theater attendance, right? Art house films are unfortunately kind of potentially becoming an endangered species. Well, accolades are kind of the thing that kind of keeps those things alive for the time being. Obviously, as new platforms like Netflix become more and more instilled, thankfully they got a new home there. So, and kind of back to my earlier point, right now, obviously these are invites. We have to wait and see who accepts. I'll be very interested to see if the likes, given the anime is what my big interest is. I'll be interested to see if like Shinkai, Hosoda, Kano, and what's his name? Katabuchi accept their invites, considering Miyazaki and Takahata were both invited numerous times, both had always declined their offers. So I'll be interested to see if they join. If they don't join, whatever. Yeah,
I was actually going to ask you, like, would it be a bigger story if they refused and they stated their reasons why?
Yeah, who knows if they will? We'll have to wait and see.
And you said Hosoda has gotten a couple of invites?
No, this is his first invite. So,
okay, who was the one you were bringing up?
Takahata and Miyazaki. Both were invited. Both had been invited many, many times and never accepted.
Is it possible that this younger generation of anime directors, at least the ones that were aware of Miyazaki and Takahata, that they would not accept because of the fact that Takahata and Miyazaki kind of got snubbed?
Possibly. I mean, for Miyazaki and Takahata reasons, they were always like different. Miyazaki always thought it's like, nah, it's just not for me. I think that kind of marks more of an ending point to my career. I can't remember exact reasons, but it's never been he's never had any like real grandiose, like big statement reasons. It's always just been more like a personal thing for him. I don't know why Takahata ever declined. I'm sure he said it somewhere. I can't really remember.
Yeah, I know with Miyazaki, at least one year he declined going to the Oscars, partially for political reasons, because of when Bush decided to send the troops into, I believe it was Iraq. He decided not to.
I think it was both Iraq and Afghanistan is what he opposed.
Yeah, because that was when he was up for Howl's Moving Castle. He decided to decline attending the ceremony. So yeah, there's that.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, like, maybe I'm being way too optimistic, and Romney will state whether or not this is the case. I want this to mean good things. I want this to mean like we're going to finally listen. We're going to actually give prestige to this award again, and award creators that are deserving of it, that have done a lot of really worthwhile work. My only worry is that, again, with a lot of these people being brand spanking new, are they even going to have that much of an opinion that has any kind of weight in the Academy compared to the veterans who have been there for so long and are basically very rooted in their ways? I don't know if it's going to affect things that much. And the other thing that this is going to piss off anime fans, but I'm going to say it, and I'm sorry, but you have Suna Katabuchi, you have Makoto Shinkai, you have Mamoru Hosoda, and you have Yoko Kanno. Okay, how many people from the Black Bloc did I just officially announce? That's a lot of people. Like Daniel Kaluuya, a bunch of other people, and I'm talking TV, I'm talking movies, I'm talking a lot of things. Look at all of those announcements, and look at these tiny 4 people who've worked on anime. That doesn't sound to me like a tremendous amount of change. Okay. If all of a sudden we got a whole block of basically prominent creators, I'm not saying like, I want a bunch of like Yoko Kanno makes sense, but like, let's just say bringing in Shinichiro Watanabe, bringing, along with these four, bringing in, Hideaki Anno, bringing in a bunch of other people, like having 10 or 20, I think would have more of an impact, unfortunately, than the four you just brought up. Okay.
Yeah.
I think these are token invites. And frankly, I'm kind of urging, and this is my opinion, I kind of urge Hosoda, Kano, Shinkai, and Katabuchi to reject them like their predecessors have. Because if this is all the change that you're going to get out of it, it's not change. Disney's still going to have their stranglehold on the animation award. It doesn't really matter. I mean, if you had like 10 or 20 people who could vote against it, then that would mean something, but not four. Four is not, these are basically hand holding and PR. So I kind of hope that these four reject the invite.
I think, well, with Kano, given she's a composer, I'm assuming her area is more going to be for the music departments for the Oscars. So her vote's going to be more in terms of score and song and that. So that, but yeah, unfortunately, I don't see much of change coming out of the animation categories other than shorts might diversify a bit better. But in terms of feature,
didn't they say a while back they were actually going to add an animated short award, and then they never did?
There's already an animated short award.
Okay, all right. I was going
to. That's been there since the animated short's actually been there longer than the animated feature award.
Yeah, it's just okay. I might be smoking crack here. I'm not sure. I could have sworn I heard like they were going to add one, or they were going to take it out, or something like that.
If they took it out, there would probably be a riot.
Yeah, because at that point, like the short award kind of became the token Pixar award too.
Not really. I think in terms of where the animation categories is, well, Disney's 99.9% likely to take home the feature award. There's always the weird upset once every so often, but the short categories is always pretty diverse and pretty interesting. It definitely goes to a lot of people. It's a lot more spread out.
Especially given that Kobe Bryant just got one. Now, again, I argue it makes sense because he was working with Glenn frickin' Keane, but it's a case that, hey, yeah, if you're doing an animated short, your chances are actually pretty good.
Oh, by the way, Kobe Bryant did not get invited, even though he just won an Oscar. So how about that?
Well, I guess we got a blessing out of this somehow. I mean, granted, he did win, but it's Kobe freaking Bryant, man. I don't want to inflate that ego any more than it's already inflated.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I'm not a sports guy, but I've heard rumor and tell of the ego of Kobe Bryant, man. Okay. Even I'm aware of that. So yeah, kind of final thoughts here. I really don't see this affecting the Academy all that much. Especially in the animation department, because if you were bringing in a whole lot more, and I'm not just talking anime creators, I'm talking US animators, I'm talking European animators. If you like the animation block was as big as what TV is looking like and what film is looking like, then I take it a little bit more seriously. But I think these are token awards just because they're sick. The Academy's sick and tired of anime fans jumping down their throat when the anime movie doesn't win. Kind of thing.
Let's look at this Oscars So White campaign backlash. So,
oh yeah, and by the way, if people want to throw racism at me for the whole black bloc thing, good luck with that. So that's my issue with this whole thing is that's the other problem that stinks out of this whole thing is the only reason that was like at the top of the list is because of the campaign that's been happening the last 2 years. It's almost like PR's a thing. Academy Awards, maybe you ought to listen to people now.
Yeah, but it's also a case. The other thing with PR is that it's very easy to make it look and sound like you're listening to them without actually listening to them. It's basically
hence why I'm saying a lot of those anime directors don't join. Don't accept.
It's a level of high art, really, where it's a case of, we're making it look like we're actually listening to what you're saying when we're not actually listening to what you're saying. It's almost how it's like politicians when they want to get elected.
Pretty much. So final thoughts on this one before we move on into the last story of the evening, because there really isn't a whole lot to go into here. Congratulations to the Academy Awards. You've gotten people to pay attention to you for a whopping 5 seconds.
Pretty much. And it's a case of, oh, hey, that's nice. Not going to watch the telecast, so it's just like, oh, hey, that's nice.
Poor Alex. He's just
after. I mean, I'm halfway there after the one this February because I got. Once again, we have to tap dance in politics here. I'm sorry, but it got annoying because every woman acceptee pretty much was like demanding, "Hey, producers, why don't you give us women more of a chance?" And I'm like, all of you make a ton of money in every movie that you do. Perhaps you want to invest some of your money and go find some women directors and make these little movies yourselves instead of bitching.
How about you be assertive and actually spend your money and your capital telling the stories that you want to tell? And if they work out, they work out. But unfortunately, it's the market. So sometimes they don't work out. Don't blame everybody else because your movie sucks.
Yeah, so basically they should do what Mila Kunis has been doing for years, where she saved up her money, started her own studio, and has been producing her own films with mostly female cast and crew. It's very much a case of, we need to do this. So basically do what someone in Hollywood has already been doing for years with moderate success.
Yeah, the only catching point on that one that I have is the only way that you're going to be able to do this is to have all women all the time. That doesn't solve the problem either. How about you create an original story that people can get behind with characters that are awesome? I'm totally willing to support you, Mila Kunis. And if your movie demands 80% women, fine. If the story demands it, I'm okay with it. But I'm just not here. I just don't want to have the whole thing of we're going to do Romeo and Juliet, but only with women because we can.
Well, yeah, that's why she's a positive example, because she's not making anything political. She's just like, I'm just going to make these female-centric comedies, much like Bridesmaids, because people want to watch those, and those films do make money, if not at the box office, usually in the home video market. It's literally just a case of, rather than trying to shake up the Oscars, it's just a case of she's just off in her corner doing her own thing.
Yep. Speaking of women, I just a little rant here. I actually lost a little bit of respect for Cate Blanchett when I found out that she ranted about the lack of success for Ocean's 8. And I think it was because she got mad because, correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, Ocean's 8 was in contention with Incredibles or another big movie, and more people went to go see that.
Let me see.
Well, I mean, I can already tell you why Ocean's 8 didn't do so well. One, nobody's really heard of Ocean's 11 in years. Two, there was never a demand for an Ocean's 11 sequel. And three, it's a case of people who saw it were probably not even sure what it was supposed to be.
Oh, I'm going to say something that's going to upset people. Ocean's 8 trailers looked as boring as Mission Impossible's trailers.
It's like, I mean, Ocean's 8 is just basically screaming, "Hey, Ocean's 11 with women. See how progressive we are?"
Pretty much. I mean, especially
I was just waiting for the complaints to come out. I was waiting for the complaints to start filing in. It's like, oh great, we got a movie full of women, but why is it still directed by a man? I hadn't seen them, but I was expecting it.
Yeah, honestly, looking at it, when you consider just how obscure the original Ocean's 11 with Frank Sinatra was when they did the remake, it's kind of a case of, I mean, an all-female heist film could work. I mean, I'm sure Alex can kind of corroborate on this. We already have stories and franchises like Cat's Eye that show, hey, the concept can actually work. Rather than trying to... Adrian Paul at a Highlander panel I went to put it best. Stop trying to force a square peg into a round hole. I mean, if your story calls for diversity, go for it, but don't force it.
Yeah, always go in the form of helping to shape the story into what it needs to be. Not because we have to fulfill this quota and this quota and this quota.
Yeah, you mentioned you want to see a good female kind of heist spy kind of ish movie. The posters behind me, Princess Principal, great anime. Not a retooling of an existing franchise, an original series that features all female spies and political intrigue and trying to usurp the throne in a fictional steampunk London. Go watch that instead of Ocean's 8.
Yeah, or even better, how about, I don't know, maybe bringing back a certain franchise that's been out of the limelight for a couple of decades. You know, a little thing called Charlie's Angels.
Yeah, there's that.
I probably better stop this now because we have actually stepped. I'm not saying pole vaulted. We stepped over the political border, but I think it's okay. I think people will forgive us for it. But
at least we kept it relevant. That's the difference.
That's the difference right there. So
yes,
and I didn't go off on my throat. I'm not pissed at Cate Blanchett. I'm just disappointed. So,
And by the way, lizard people control the universe.
see, you guys say lizard people, and it comes across in my headset as blizzard people. I'm like, what did Jeff Kaplan do to piss off my panel? I mean, he's done a lot of things to piss off people recently, but anyway. Well,
moving on.
Moving on into the last story that we have tonight. This one was a bit of a shocker when it was announced, and a couple of listeners actually reached out and have some questions in regards to it. But let's go ahead and announce the story. Jared Leto. The story that we have says that he's likely to star. We've actually since gotten confirmation from Jared Leto saying he has been confirmed in the cast to be starring in Morbius, the Living Vampire. Now, a lot of people might be saying, well, why is that relevant? Morbius actually is a villain in the Spider-Man universe. He is literally an aspiring, I don't want to say it was Romania, but it was a Romanian-esque country who was trying to become a doctor so he could go home and help his people out. And because the Marvel Universe does this, freak scientific accident, he turns himself into a vampire and therefore becomes a kind of sympathetic villain for Spider-Man, because like he's one of those cases like the Lizard where Spider-Man wants to help him get better, but unfortunately desire to feed and everything like that just kind of goes against it. And Jared Leto will be apprising the role of Morbius. Now, people immediately lashed out to us and went, well, you guys don't like the Joker. What is your opinion on him playing Morbius? Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and give my opinion. I'm okay with this decision. I'm waiting for the internet to all collectively explode, because I actually said Jared Leto could play something.
Yeah.
Nobody exploded? Cool. Robbie.
Oh, yeah. The thing is that people forget, like, oh, like, Jared Leto can't play something. And I'm just like, you realize he's won an Oscar, right?
He's a fairly good actor when you put him in the right stuff.
Yeah, and that's the key thing, the right stuff. And honestly, looking at the character of Morbius, and given, as even the article alleges, he became a bit of an anti-hero, making a standalone film around Morbius makes more sense than trying to say Venom. And so here, it's a case of, I can see it, and honestly, I even posted it in the original, when I shared the link to the Geek News page, is that looking, and granted, they're showing a still from Blade Runner 2049, but looking at Jared Leto, he kind of reminds me of Deacon Frost from the Blade movie. And it's a case of, I can see it. I mean, honestly, and this is probably just wishful thinking. He might have been a better pick
than who they actually got to play Deacon, wouldn't he?
Yeah, I mean, granted, he wasn't like acting. I think Jared Leto was still heavily involved in music at the time. Mm-hmm. But basically, looking at it as a case of, it works. I mean, given his gaunt face, I can believably see him being a vampire.
Yeah.
Honestly, though, I'm kind of hoping that I mean, I don't know who has the rights to Blade, but it's like, oh, Morbius. Does that mean we may see Blade? I mean, that would be a cool role reversal.
Does Fox have the rights to Blade?
I don't know. That's weird. I think they may have reverted, but I'm not sure.
I hate to do this. Alex, you are our research machine. Find out who owns Blade. But first of all, give us your opinions. Jared Leto on Morbius. Do you like the idea? Do you like the pick?
I barely remember this character, so I don't have any real strong opinions on it.
Because you watched a little bit of the Fox Spider-Man, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think they did his arc, and I don't think they completed his arc, because he actually got a good amount of time in a season for the creation of Morbius and going into him. But I don't think they ever finished the arc. I think they just went into other things because they couldn't figure out a way to finish it.
Well, yeah, I know that was like at a later point in the series where you literally had Spider-Man talking to Stan Lee at some point. Yeah. And so that was when the show, I think I was in the later run, because another thing to consider is that the Amazing the Spider-Man cartoon had a lot of restrictions placed upon it by standards and practices, where all the guns had to be lasers. They couldn't say kill or die. And with Morbius especially, they had to make it where they didn't say, oh, he's sucking blood. They had to say, oh, he's sucking plasma. As well as giving us a G-rated version.
Yeah, that was the justification. He was sucking the plasma out instead of blood.
Which, honestly, plasma is blood. I mean, it's a side...
Yeah. Plasma's like a tiny bit of your blood, guys. He was sucking out blood.
The best way to look at it, it's like he's sucking out kind of... And again, my younger sibling is probably going to want to throttle me because my younger sibling's a certified EMT, but sucking out the plasma, it's kind of like sucking out the liquid out of the blood is the best way to look at it. It's like sucking out the liquid, sucking out the stuff that actually allows it to flow through your veins. I may be getting that detail wrong. I was an arts major, not a medical student, so don't.
Well, I'm pretty sure. So your younger sibling and my wife is probably going to want to murder us both, because it's just like we're talking medical terminology, and guys, it's comic books. Okay, I'm not even sure Stan Lee knows enough about blood to be able to make this work. I mean, for crying out loud, video games couldn't even get mitochondria right. So,
yeah, but then again, that's why in the comics they just say blood, they don't say plasma. Yeah. But yeah, point being, Morbius, that raises the other thing, is that it's an obscure enough character that they can probably take some liberties with it that allow them to tell their own story and aren't nearly as shackled to established canon. And so I can see this film being very similar to Blade in that regard, where it's kind of a darker side of this Marvel universe that we get to see. And to kind of make my initial point, if Sony has the rights to Blade, that would be a nice role reversal, is that instead of having Blade being the hero, have it where it's from Morbius's point of view, and Blade just happens to be the villain as a result of circumstance.
Actually, if they find a way to be able to do it, bringing Blade into it might actually be very interesting. Anyway, Alex, go.
Yeah, speaking of your earlier question, Marvel now has the rights to Blade again.
Oh, so they went back. So the Marvel Cinematic, then that probably means not likely, because it's more likely that Blade will get reintegrated into the cinematic universe or into the TV universe than he would in this case.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still holding out hope that Marvel will decide to do a horror universe, like a horror imprint, because, well, again, Blade, Dracula, Ghost Rider, Mephisto, those you can't do in a PG-13 film. You really can't. Now, there are a couple things that we need to clarify really quick, because listeners that brought this story to my attention as well got the story a little bit wrong. Okay, this is not an unveiling for a Spider-Man villain, people. This is actually saying that Morbius would get his own standalone film. Which is actually a lot better idea, because I don't want to see Morbius contending with Spider-Man. If anything, I'd like to see him as like that intermittent third villain in a movie where Spider-Man's constantly trying to bring him back, and he just keeps getting darker and darker and falling into that pit kind of thing. That's what this character kind of is. But no, what they're doing with him right now is a much better idea, to do it as a standalone film and give Morbius the spotlight instead of like Spider-Man's interactions with him. But that being said, the other thing that people wanted to ask about this is it official? Since it's a little wonky in this regard, but a lot of people have basically pointed out, oh, look, we've had our first occurrence of a star moving from one cinematic universe to the other, as Jared Leto worked on Suicide Squad and was part of the DC cinematic universe for whatever it was, and now he's officially working on a Marvel property. Do we officially call him the first one to cross over? Ryan Reynolds would like to have a word with you.
Yeah, Ryan Reynolds would be technically the first one. But even then, it's tricky, okay? Because it's not officially a Marvel property. This is Fox, okay? And Fox is...
This is
Sony, sorry. Because Sony wants to do the Spider-Verse. This isn't necessarily a Marvel DC thing. This is Sony trying to do their own thing, so I don't know if I would necessarily count it. But yes, he technically did play a DC character, and now he's playing a Marvel character. But yeah, Ryan Reynolds was definitely first in this regard. So having that question answered, I mean, where do we want to actually see Morbius go? As far as like, you know, Romney's brought up the idea of bringing Blade into the mix, because this would be an interesting way to be able to interact with him, considering Morbius is technically not a vampire. At least, you know, Stan Lee would tell you he's not a vampire. But having Blade, a legit vampire who fights vampires on a regular basis, might actually be an interesting interaction for him to have. And the other question that I guess we need to ask is, does this mean he's going to join the is he officially in the Spider-Verse? Will we see him in Spider-Man movies?
It probably depends on how well the movie does. That's probably going to be the real deciding factor, because we also have Venom coming out in the near future. And honestly, the success of Venom is probably going to dictate whether or not this movie even makes it to production. Because I'm still on the fence regarding Venom. I mean, Tom Hardy's a good actor, and at least they're trying to go a bit darker. It's just, again, with the introduction of Eddie Brock, but not having that animosity against Peter Parker, you know, kind of a key part of his character, just seems weird. Whereas something like Morbius would probably have been a better starting point, because unlike Eddie Brock and Venom, Morbius doesn't have a native tie to Spider-Man.
Pardon the pun here. Venom is a more black and white character when it comes to a lot of things, whereas, yeah, I get it. Black and white, that's his uniform. But Morbius is a much more ambiguous character because at that point, you can actually have him start very humbly and then eventually become what he becomes. And at that point, you can actually begin to pity him. You can feel sorry for him. In fact, I would actually make this argument that if this is what they had done with the Amazing Spider-Man 2 Electro, we might have actually had a lot more respect for Electro. But unfortunately, you put him in as a villain against Spider-Man instead of having him kind of explore the world around him after his change.
Well, and alternately, the other mistake was they decided to throw in Rhino and the Green Golem as well. Because apparently the notion of having only one villain is just something Sony just has a problem with.
But that's technically what I would want Morbius to be in a Spider-Man film, is kind of what they did with Electro, where he's just in a very precarious situation and Spider-Man tries to bring him back, but it doesn't matter. He keeps falling darker and darker, kind of thing. That's where Mobius needs to go as a character. So at that, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, Romney. I think that basically every movie is touch and go at this point for the Spider-Verse, because you have Venom, and I think that's going to kind of teeter on the other films that are coming out. We have Black Cat and Silver Sable. That is another movie that's going to be happening.
And then we also have the animated Into the Spider-Verse film that Sony's putting out as well, which I'm kind of excited for, because it's a case of, hey, a traditionally animated film being released by a large company that isn't Disney. How about that?
And a lot of these films are included. Well, Into the Spider-Verse is coming out this year, but Venom and Black Cat and Silver Sable, and I think the Morbius film too, are all set to come out before the Spider-Man license runs out in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So at that point, there won't even be a Spider-Man film until after these movies. So you already have kind of established villains or anti-heroes to a lesser extent already to kind of set the flair of the universe. And therefore you can just throw Spider-Man in and have it awesome.
Yeah, especially, and plus this will get out a lot of the origin guesswork for, and pretty much it'll do what, Suicide Squad should have done, establishing these characters in separate stories and then having them interact and play off each other in a later film. And and honestly, like when you look at how, like, seeing the rise of Venom, seeing the rise of Morbius, seeing the rise of like all these other characters, is a case of, okay, it gets the guesswork out of the way. So that way, when you do have a Spider-Man movie where he has to deal with these people, the audience already knows who they are. You don't have to devote any time to reintroducing them. It's just a case of, oh, that's Morbius. Oh, that's Black Cat and Silver Sable. We already know who these people are, which means we can get straight to the action.
And another thing that maybe Alex will agree with me on is that going this direction allows for us to set up the Spider-Verse and be able to do hintings like Norman Osborn, being able to show Dr. Connors before he was the Lizard, to be able to show all of these other aspects as potential for something that Spider-Man could take on. And that might actually work in the long run for their betterment, to be able to help establish a lot of these villains who, look, a lot of fans love these villains because of the fact they are like there's a reason to sympathize with them. There's a reason to relate to them.
Yeah. Honestly, as you were just saying that, my brain said like, oh, well, they may not have the rights to Blade, but another character that would make for a good villain for Morbius to interact with, Kraven the Hunter. Because
actually, that would probably be that would be an amazing villain to actually have him interact with. And
because it literally would be two hunters kind of clashing against one another, both in search of prey. It's a case of like, that's something I would pay to see, is watching Morbius and Kraven play off of each other.
Yeah, that's actually one Spider-Man villain I've wanted to see for a while, but just to see what like Hollywood would do with him, because Kraven the Hunter is one of those few villains who actually gets solid victories against Spider-Man a lot of the time. And so what they could actually do with that would be amazing. And I would actually like to see Kraven go up against characters like Venom and Morbius, just because they would be really good quarries for him to be able to test him out, but also to flesh out that character. Because in order for Kraven to work, you can't just throw him in a Spider-Man film. You got to kind of tell the story first. And this would be the way to do it.
I mean, that, especially when you consider how certain characters, even in the Marvel comics, were introduced in this similar fashion. I mean, the Punisher wasn't introduced with just his own comic. How was the Punisher introduced? As a Spider-Man villain. Specifically, before his family was killed, he was basically a mob hired by the Mafia. Then his target was Spider-Man. You could have Kraven kind of introduced in a similar way.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, Alex, could you do another research for us? Who owns Ghost Rider at this
That's
point?
also Marvel.
Yeah,
that's Marvel. So the
Yeah.
rights have gone over. That would have actually been another really great interaction for Morbius to have had with was Ghost Rider himself, just to establish that darker side of Marvel. But I agree with you, Romney. You can't do that with movies. You need to have a series to be able to establish these guys as who they are. But at the same time, you have to go guaranteed. You have to go hard R for a lot of these characters. That's why in a lot of cases I never went and saw the Nicolas Cage Ghost Rider films, because as soon as I saw the PG-13 marking on it, I'm like, hell no. This is not Ghost Rider.
I will say this. The first one's a bit of a guilty pleasure because of just how silly and over the top it is.
Yeah, I've been told that, but the second one
you can miss. That's basically Nicolas Cage taking himself way too seriously.
The best description I've ever heard for Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance is basically what it would look like if Nicolas Cage had to direct Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, that's surprisingly apt.
Yep. So Teen Titans go to the movies and Superman. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding. He's got a director that's reining him in a little bit.
Yeah, although now I'm just wanting, okay, now someone needs to animate the Nicolas Cage Superman with lines from Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance, specifically the lines of him going crazy. That needs to be a thing.
Superman, are you okay? I'm good. My skull's on fire, but I'm good.
But I mean, especially the whole scratching at the door scene. I'm just like, okay, I mean, it'll take me an eternity, but I'm almost tempted to just try to animate that myself, because watching Superman go completely insane with those kinds of lines.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to see this. I want this to be a thing.
So with that being said, Alex, you've kind of been quiet on this matter. Like, what's your kind of final take on the Morbius film? Is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? Does this help flesh out a Spider-Man universe that you want to go see?
I guess I'm just kind of on the fence with it. Like I said, this was not a character I have a lot of familiarity with. It'll be interesting to see what it can do. I do like the concept where it can kind of build the Spider universe a bit more, especially with the rogues gallery and the villains. I'll just be interested to see what they do with it.
Okay. Are you worried at all at the Jared Leto pick?
Not really. We'll just have to really wait and see what he does. What like in a trailer.
All right. So final thoughts before we wrap things up for the evening. I think we've pretty much hit everything on the head. Just as much as we don't like Jared Leto as the Joker, and guys, the reason we didn't like him as the Joker was not because we think Jared Leto could do a bad performance. It's because we got to see the early concept art for it and went, what?
Well, that and having a film that is an utter train wreck being the introduction of that version of the Joker didn't help.
I mean, my first reaction to that picture was just, oh, it's gangsta Joker. I don't know how I feel about that. But him as Morbius, I like it. Like, I'm already visioning it in my head, and I like the Blade Runner 2049 image they got, because that's exactly how I would see like Michael Morbius getting off the boat or getting off the plane and going to university. That's how he would look. And then eventually you can just kind of slowly devolve him into a more of a bat-like creature. That would actually be really cool.
I mean, honestly, the easiest way is if you basically just do kind of a modern day retelling of Dracula, but with Morbius instead of Dracula, you've got a movie.
Yeah. But I don't know if we actually clarified that, but that's the problem with a lot of Spider-Man villains, is that they somehow got fused with the DNA of another creature. And so like the lizard, that's because there was an accident fusing him with the DNA of a lizard. In fact, that actually becomes Spider-Man's downfall, because he is his own villain as the Man Spider. So
yeah. But at least with Morbius, it makes a bit more sense, because he was already researching bats because of a blood disorder. So there, it at least, and again, they find a way to at least have it make sense. Because even with the lizard, it's like, oh, we're researching how to regenerate tissue.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to point out to people is like him slowly devolving into a bat makes a lot of sense considering the mutation that actually happened there. So in a lot of cases where I had problems with the Jared Leto Joker makeup, I'm not going to have problems with a Jared Leto Morbius makeup. It's going to look really good.
I mean, honestly, looking at the shape of his face, I mean, if they decide to do a remake of
his face really works, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, and I mean, if they did a remake of Nosferatu, he probably would look like a very scary version of Count Orlok.
Yeah, I'm already, I don't know about you, Romney, but I'm already kind of picturing him with the sunken nose and with the more the amberish looking eyes and a much more sullen or sallow and sunken look. And I like what I'm seeing in my head.
Yep.
It really does work for the character. And the other thing too, I don't know if this is actually kept in the comics, but I do like the Fox mechanic of like his hand being how he sucks out blood. I want that to stay. That's actually, I would love to see that animated.
Yeah,
I'm not saying I want to see like this demonic mouth in his hand. I'm saying I want to see like little suckers. Little suckers.
Well,
that would be awesome.
Well, the main reason they did that was because they couldn't really have him be an actual vampire. Because again, the aforementioned censorship.
No, but I mean, if they have to go full on vampire for it, I don't care. But I would love to see those little suckers on his hand. That would be awesome.
Yeah, although there's oddly enough one funny comment on the IO9 Gizmodo article we're looking at, where it literally says he should be rewritten as a vampire sex working mathematician, and they can call the movie Morbius Strip.
All right, I think we ought to wrap up on that. I think that's the perfect tone that we're looking for here, guys. So that's all our stories for the evening, and let's go ahead and wrap things up for the evening. Thank you guys so much for coming out and watching our live broadcast of the podcast. But if you want to be able to get a hold of us and be able to discuss the issues that we talked about tonight, as well as any other things that you would like to bring up with us individually, Alex the Shadow Blazer, how do they do that with you?
Find me on YouTube, youtube.com. ShadowBlazer3000 is my channel, and I do anime-related content, reviews, occasional Let's Plays, and such. And if you want to always contact me directly, best place to find me is on social media, Twitter, at AlexJShort. That's where you can reach me. Send your mail to me. Stop sending it to Drac.
It's only this week, guys.
So, yeah, feel free to reach out to me there. Occasionally, yes, I am on Discord a little more these days, considering my friends have all kind of moved there now, so I'm generally there a lot more. But still, Twitter's always the best place to find me because I get notifications of when people tweet at me.
Yep. All right. Stephen Romney of Studio Ghost Utah, how do people get a hold of you?
Well, you can always find me under my handle, Studio Ghost Utah. That is my handle both on Facebook and on YouTube. You can also find me on Instagram at Romney Does Art and on Twitter at Romney Reviews, which, much like Alex, if you want to send questions to me directly, Twitter is probably the best place. And again, to echo the sentiment, seriously, stop sending stuff to Adam. We all have our own ways of contacting us. The guy works hard enough.
Yes, especially with another baby on the way. I mean, I'm already kind of getting ready to wrap things up for a little while because I might have to take a little bit more time off this time around with 2 kids in the house.
Yep,
so,
indeed.
Yeah.
And as for this week's Romney's recommendation, I'm going to recommend an episode from a television show that I've been watching on and off throughout the week. It is a BBC series titled Extreme Pilgrim. What this show is about a man who is a vicar in the Anglican Church by the name of Peter Owen Jones, who decides to go on a spiritual journey to kind of regain the sense of spirituality that he feels has been lost in modern-day society. And the first episode of this journey has him taking a journey to the Shaolin Temple and trying to understand the concept of Zen Buddhism and how it's practiced both through the movements of Kung Fu and through Buddhist philosophy. Now, what caught my attention is that this is a priest, an ordained priest in the Anglican Church, who is willing to open up his mind to other religions and other cultural perspectives. And so it's a really fascinating look at the philosophy of Zen Buddhism and of Shaolin Kung Fu. So if you wanted to see a documentary that focuses on the Shaolin Temple, that gets away from the martial arts techniques and focuses more on the philosophy, I highly recommend the show. It's part of a trilogy. This first episode is focused on the Shaolin Temple. Then he does an episode where he visits India, and then the last episode's in Egypt. So that's this week's Romney's recommendation, is the BBC series Extreme Pilgrim, produced and starring Reverend Peter Owen Jones.
All right. And if people want to be able to get a hold of me, the best place to be able to reach me as well is on Twitter, which is at Drac2326. You guys can reach me out there. That's probably the best place. But while you're here on my channel, please check out all the content that I actually do provide, especially considering that I'm probably going to have to reduce a lot of that content again because I've got a second child on the way. But I do Let's Play content as well as reviews, and there actually are a couple of reviews on their way. I think they're going to be coming out this weekend, so you guys can look forward to that very soon. But if you want to be able to support the podcast, the first thing that we ask that you guys do is support the RSS feed. And the way that you can do that is you can go to geekyweek.podomatic.com and support us there. or you can look up the Geek News Reviews and Opinions podcast or the GNRO podcast on iTunes or on Google Play for Android users, and you can get the podcast there. And we very thankfully ask for your support there. If you guys want to be able to support us on social media, you can do so either on Twitter or Facebook under the exact same heading, which is Geeky NRO. And with those pages, you're going to get up-to-the-minute information when we're going live, the stuff we're going to be talking about, any other special events that we might actually be having either exclusively for the YouTube feeds or for the RSS feed. You will get all of that information there. And then obviously, if you want to send in any listener stories or listener feedback, you can do so at geekyweek@gmail.com. And that's going to go ahead and do it for us this evening. Thank you guys so much for coming out and joining us for this interesting evening. We appreciate all of the love and patience and support that you guys give us. It really does help us out, especially on those hard weeks. We really do appreciate it. And of course, we'll be back next week for more Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions. Actually, we might not be there next week because of the 4th of July weekend, but we'll keep you guys up to speed on that. But in the meantime, that's going to go ahead and do it for us. So for me, for Romney, and for Alex, we'll see you guys next time for the next episode of Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions. We'll see you then.